Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 670. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Whalen, drnorge, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Jim, the sensei of the whatnot, the master of speculation, the duke of the sultan of strategery, the bridge-defying, and from this point forth demands to be known as the three-face of the whatnot, but he still remains the elder statesman of the podcast, Segulin.
How's it going, eh?
Jim, on this episode, we are joined by Brett Harris as we are going to wrap up our two-part look at Batman 89 with issues 4 through 6. We are sponsored, as always, by DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. Jim, what is going on over at DCBService.com?
DCBS has this really neat search function, and it lets you go in and look at what they have in stock that's relisted versus the brand new stuff coming out. All you got to do is just plug in whichever superhero you're looking for, and it shows you past comics as well as statues and figurines and whatnot. Right now, I just plugged in Batman, and I'm looking at a Batman bust, 25% off, only $18.71. Another Batman statue, 20% off, only $19.99. You name it, they've got it. So thank you, DCBS.
Over at InStockTrades.com, they always have their deals of the week, and they have some really good ones this time around. The Batman Shadow of the War hardcover, $39.99 regularly, 50% off, only $19.99. That Shadow War crossover was excellent. They have Task Force Z hardcover volume 1, Death's Door, $29.99 regularly, 50% off, only $14.99. I'm a big fan of these hardcover collections, and it's great when you get them at these kind of discounts. I want to thank DCB Service and InStockTrades.com for continuing to support our show. And to kick off this episode, Jim, we're going to give you a break once again this week and let Brett kick us off with the spoiler warning.
G'day, coppers. Captain Boomerang here, hanging out with me mates Sean and Jim, who you know from their Raging Bullets podcast. Gotta tell ya, the boys give you all the thrills, chills, and Sunday spills of all the books they're yarning about. So make sure you've read the books before you listen, or you'll end up as adult as an emu in an antique shop. Now, if you have read the books, crack a tinny and open your ears for some Bonza comic talk. Ha! Cheers!
Nothing like the handy-dandy electro-claw for carving through metal doors.
All right, our next discussion is going to be on Chapter 4 of Batman 89. Sam Hamm is the writer. Joe Quinones is the artist and did the cover work. Leonardo Ito is the colorist. Clayton Cowles on letters. Babs Tarr, the variant cover. Andrew Marino, the editor. And Batman created by Bob Kane with Bill Finger. And apologies for any name butchering. Also, there are other people who've done variant covers along the way through this process. Obviously, I'm just pulling the creative team from Chapter 4 right now. But, guys, first of all, I want to welcome back Brett Harris, who's joining us for this segment. Brett, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Sean. Good to be here with you and Jim.
I'm really excited to talk about issue number 4 of this. I reread issues 4 through 6 in preparation for today, just to kind of, refresh my mind beforehand and and really, I just was getting excited to talk about this book. There's a lot going on here. And I'm marveling at our first part of this one, because we were thinking we'd get this whole bad boy in one episode. And I'm so seeing now, as I read issues 4 through 6, why that just wasn't going to happen. There is a lot going on and a lot of character development for a lot of people. It's not just the, Bruce Wayne and Alfred and Selina. There's development with Bullock. There's development with Mr. Otis. There's a lot going on in this story. And that's, I think, what I'm loving most, because we're kicking off this issue with Bullock, Mr. Otis, and what's going on, and Harvey Dent. A little bit more on Drake, how he's kind of sneaking into things. And I really like the opening of issue 4. It kicks off the ground running, and there's a lot. This is a very dense read in a great way.
Hold on, before we dive into that, I got a comment on the cover for issue 4 is absolutely outstanding. I love this cover. First image of this universe is Robin, but also then it was funny because I also did some rereads, and and it really hit me as I started looking at the covers. Just spend some time. And normally I'm not a big heavy cover guy. I get variant covers, but I do that for the collector mindset in me. It's the sickness I have. I admit it. But this cover, I'll tell you, really, this series, these covers, absolutely, to me, were just absolutely wonderful.
Agreed.
I really love this, and this was one of those where I'm like, this is something I'd like to get signed by the people, have it hang up on my wall. Just how cool and personalized they went with this. It just wasn't even just the main look of Robin, which is awesome. They went through and just you look at the background stuff with the bats, the smashed bat symbol. It's got an R on it. You got Batman sitting up on the top, just the brooding bat looking down on him. Just the Gotham skyline. The art team could have very easily, slacked off a little bit, and they didn't on this cover. It's just something I just really wanted to throw. I love this cover.
The Robin outfit's an interesting one in this one, because I was thinking back to the Batman '89 film, just where I was at mentally in this era, and at least what I was going for, where I wanted a little closer to the comics, trying to, really delve into that. It's interesting to see this now because I love this costume, and I couldn't agree with you more. I'm wondering if back then, and obviously we would have been like 2 movies in at this point. This would have been the 3rd, where my head would have been at with seeing this costume on screen. And I know now I'd adore it. And I'm not saying I wouldn't have liked it because I love this story. I would love to see what the original treatment was for, like, how far along they got in scripting this. Did it get scripted? Was it, how much of this idea was fleshed out? How much of this got fleshed out for the comics for us to read now? Because it works really well now. I do think it really works as a 3rd movie for the Batman '89 series. I mean, so it's not like we're so far distance and we're using today's sensibilities so much that I feel like this isn't in that movie universe and continuity. It totally is. I think I'm different now as a reader, and I really, to your point, Jim, I really appreciate this. I think it's a really great design, and there's something functional about it, and it's cool. It is, and yet has all the right elements of what I like about various Robins bundled into one. It's surprising for me because I know in that era I would have been more leaning towards, hey, can we get closer to the traditional Robin? And now I really appreciate this. I'm trying to think like me back then, and what would I have thought?
See, I'm thinking even back in the day, I would have looked at this costume and thought, well, it doesn't really look like Robin, but it's cool because he looks like a ninja. Yeah. He's got the covering so that all you can really see his eyes, the hood covers the rest of his head. The face mask covers the rest. He's carrying like a really cool bow staff. So he does, even the arm guards and stuff. So I think, being a ninja obsessed child of the 80s, I would have just looked at that, and just gone, man, Robin's a ninja. Yeah.
And he can turn his head.
Yeah, that's right.
And I remember first time I saw the Tim Drake costume, how much I loved it because it had more of the blending into the shadow elements, but still had the yellow lining and still had that. That was something that always used to bother me. Robin was so brightly colored, and Batman's hiding in the shadows. Here's your target, guys. While I hide here and wait. I always had that mindset, and so. Me back then, I would have loved this costume, just like how I loved first time seeing Tim Drake's costume. So that was something that I was like, but again, this is a dramatically different look. And if this was what the original plan was back when, this would have been the early 90s, if this had been a movie, how would the people have reacted to it? That I think is we can only speculate and we can only guess, but that for me would be something I would love to see people completely either love this or completely lose it over this. You look at how people are dealing with a lot of changes that happen in comics nowadays, how freaked out they get. Back in the 90s, would they have been more understanding and accepting of a different look, or would it really have just exploded to the point where you would have outrage? I don't know.
Wait, I can answer that.
They'd accept it.
Here's what I can answer for you, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. It was more. I think you're making an excellent point. Think about where things were back then. The reliance on the internet, social media, the people blasting things like that. That wouldn't have happened. It was a very different time. So I think you're nailing something here, Jim, in what you're talking about. I think this would have been much more well accepted. And I think what the two of you keyed on for me is exactly why I do think I would have I do think, thinking back to me back then, I would have loved this for the reasons that you're both pointing out. I think its links to Tim Drake are really apparent. It's also the ninja look. I agree. It's very functional. It's very cool. It is a very cool costume. If they had done this back then, I think I would have at first been like, maybe my initial shock would have been what I was saying. We're like, oh, I kind of wanted to be more like that. Then as the movie got along and we got to see this in function, because this would be very functional on screen. And I made the joke about turning your head, but really, out of the two costumes, when you think about it, his body movement would be a little different than Batman's. His ability to be able to be acrobatic and more Robin-like would have been certainly not been impaired in this costume. It would have been an interesting compliment to what he was doing as Batman with this costume. I think it's really cool, and your reasoning for liking this, I think, is really striking me off of this one, and I think it's cool. It's very cool.
And I can see as well, having Robin, because he is more mobile and can do more of the acrobatic sort of stuff, he could have more of a kung fu style of fighting as well, and he would be blending into the shadows where and jumping around people and using the shadows as more of a distraction, and then he'll punch one guy here and then spin his bow staff to hit the next guy, and Batman would just sort of just lurk in the shadows like the horror monster that he can be, and then just snap you out of nowhere. Like I and man, how good would the action figures for this have been? Oh, man, it's so cool.
I think one of the things that I like about the costume too, his costume makes sense in the sense that if you look at his background and his backstory, he doesn't have Bruce Wayne money. So this is a costume that looks like something somebody could have gradually fashioned from things that they were able to put together and scrape together and yet make into something cool, like with design concepts. Like this shows like the creativity of the character. It looks cool, it looks functional, it also looks like something that didn't cost him like an excessive amount of money to put together. That's the part I think that was really creative about it, is it makes sense from a story perspective as well.
And the R really isn't Robin. It's the Royal, Automotive, where he's, where he works. Mr. Otis's, business. And again, earlier in this series, they really did show us this kid is super smart. He's got a big brain in him, so he would be able to, think out of the box and do this. And just his attacks that he's doing here against the police with the big bag of paint and giving the spray cans to the rioters. These are actually protesters, not rioters. But it's you can see just the intelligence, the strategy the kid's got, that all of this 100% makes sense to who he initially was introduced as and who he was developed as. So once again, continuing on development of these characters from issues and items developed in the first 3 issues. It's one of the reasons I absolutely really love this series, how much growth keeps going each issue between them. And you mentioned it earlier, Sean, even Bullock's growth as a villain, really is starting to show and starting to come out more. So there's some really cool moments in this in these issues.
Well, can I laugh at the irony of one thing that you just said? You were complimenting his strategery because, like, he, put together this costume and all that, because he put the logo from the place where he works on his outfit. And wait, I was nodding along at all the compliments you were giving the character and the way that the character was developed. I just was laughing at. He did all of these smart things, but I got a great idea for an accessory in my outfit that's supposed to be hiding my identity. Let's put the logo of the place I work, which now automatically limits the person this could potentially be down to a small group.
Hey, it's kind of like the goatee on Green Arrow, all right?
Right,
no one
right.
But it is a cool way to, again, show Drake's character. He's all about the neighborhood and protecting his neighborhood while he is part of it. So having the R there, he could just say, oh, look, Mr. Otis is so cool that he sponsors me. Or, hey, this shows that I know the hood. I know what Royal Autos is. I don't work there, but I love the logo. So, no, I like it.
So let's talk a little bit about Bullock, because, Jim, you started going there. I thought you were making an interesting point. So you called him a villain. So is that how you view him, Harvey, in this? Is Harvey a villain? Is it that simple? And I'm not, that's not me jumping on you. It's more, I think you're heading us down an interesting path to talk about who Bullock is as a character. How do you view Bullock in this?
See, actually, I really do view him as a corrupt cop, a villain in this series, and it is something because I really like Harvey Bullock. I think he's a great cop. I love how when they use him in the current continuity, where he does dance the line a little bit, but in the end, he's a good cop. This Bullock, I don't know, is a good cop. This Bullock, again, we see him in the opening pages of this where he's directly going against Gordon's. The Gotham PD is sent to peacefully, guide and make sure nothing goes wrong. He's going against it. He's saying, no, we form a wall. We do the riot. These are rioters and this and that. And he was getting his cops amped up to thump some heads. That right there is not a good guy. That right there, to me, makes him the villain, makes him a villain of the story. Now, people can argue both sides of it for him, but for me, I see him really, these issues, as the definition of the villain of the story, because, again, police are protect and serve, not break up a peaceful demonstration and turn it into a riot. Yeah. He's trying to antagonize and turn a peaceful demonstration into a riot so then he can thump some more heads and arrest people. It's classic bad guy, cops who abuse their authority. And it's a great usage of showing just how easy it is for a cop to go down the wrong path. And that's the thing for me why I, again, absolutely love just how, I see him as a crooked cop, but it's not even just the simplistic, very bad villain, twist your mustache kind of crooked cop. In one hand, you can say, okay, I can kind of see where he's coming from. But in the end, you're like, no, look what he's doing. This is wrong. There's right and wrong. This is wrong. And I absolutely loved how they're playing him in this series. And again, this is another build-up from the past stuff. We've seen him build up to this point.
It's very Harvey Bullock. I mean, in the sense that I don't feel it's out of character. I think they did a good job of incorporating this character into the Batman 89 universe without losing what makes Harvey interesting, because I do see the possibility of this character, as they continue to develop the story, as being one that could potentially be redeemed, which that's Harvey's thing, right? Where he's corrupt, he's made bad choices, things like that, but it's not the whole story. I like the gray areas of Gotham, like when we get a chance to explore them. And I really like in this being the potential third movie, them maturing the story. Because I felt like they did that with between 1 and 2, and now from 2 to 3, they're continuing that. I really wish this got made, because it would be interesting to see how much of this they would have been able to translate to the big screen. Because we talked about, with this being a 6-issue series, how much story is here. It would have been interesting to see if they could have gotten, how much of this depth they could have gotten onto the screen. Because this story is really working for me because of those pieces where we're having deep talks around now Harvey Bullock, which I think is great. It's a great part of this.
Yeah, I'm with you both. It's interesting because Harvey, it is the Harvey that we know, but he's the Harvey that has made those choices that we know our Harvey wouldn't. Our Harvey would always just scooch up to the line, but when push comes to shove, he would choose to do the right thing. This Harvey Bullock chooses to cross the line and do it just to justify his own violent urges. As you say, Jim, he wants to crack heads, he wants to be seen as a good cop, and he wants to just do that. Not only does our Harvey not do that, we've got the example on this page with Jim Gordon saying, no, we're not going to do that. I'm making the choice in this situation is we're going to treat these people like the protesters they are, not the rioters that you want them to be. And I agree that it'd be really interesting to the way that Harvey is developed in this. I could very much see him changing when in the fourth movie he gets partnered up with a young Renee Montoya who is idealistic and wants to do the right thing but has a couple of secrets of her own. Harvey takes her under the wing and she starts to rub off on him and he starts to get more protective of her. So I could see that playing out quite so that we do get the fall of Harvey Bullock and the rise of Harvey Bullock, and I guess paralleling the fall of Harvey Dent, so the two Harveys going in different directions. But yeah, I've very much enjoyed the whole theme of choice coming into it again. And on this page, you've got three different people all making their choices. Gordon is saying, no, we should be treating these people as peaceful protesters. We have Harvey saying, well, no, I think they're rioters. And then we've got Drake coming in, almost playing that middle role where he is saying, yes, we're protesters. Yes, we're non-violent. But at the same time, we're not going to allow you guys to roll over us. So just that theme of choice is coming through again and again. I think that's what makes this book such a deep read and so juicy. There's so much to dig into.
You also have to want to see Harvey get his comeuppance here because this Drake sequence is such an Batman 89, that whole universe's handling of this. Because there's comedic elements that come in. But what I really loved about this was you're at this point in time ready to smack Harvey upside the head. That when Drake does it with his paint gimmick, I thought it was a really clever use. I thought it was something that very much fit what those movies would have done. When you think of little pranks that happened in the first two, this one was a peaceful way of really derailing the plans of the police. So, he's not crossing the line, not, shooting or killing anybody. He's clearly showing that he could fit into Batman's mode of operating, but doing it in his own way. And I actually really liked the way that I was going to see that thing dropping out of the sky. I'm like, oh, where's this gonna go? And it was a really cool handling. And he released another one that empowered the people to a non-violent way of reacting. The spray paint cans gave them, I guess a mace equivalent, where it's we're not going to hurt anybody, but we're certainly going to do everything we can to survive what's going to happen here. Because what Harvey puts in motion could have led to somebody being killed. That's the nice part about what Drake's doing, is he's setting a symbol of, hey, there's ways you can get out of this situation without it escalating to where it potentially could have gone, because that was a disaster waiting to happen.
Well, you think about it. Harvey is Bullock's ordering formation, rubber bullets, open fire on my command. Mm-hmm. He's escalating it even beyond,
right?
Just thumping some heads. And you say rubber bullets, it won't kill. Yes, it will. It can still kill you, and it still hurts big time. It would have seriously escalated even more. So I love how you're seeing both sides. It just completely keeps growing and going and going, and you get to the point when you kind of get that really cheer moment, that pop when Gordon shows up, says, "Hey, this is Commissioner Gordon. All officers, stand down. I repeat, stand down. The march will proceed as planned." And I love how Gordon recognized what Bullock was doing, shows up on scene, and again, they're showing more of a backbone on Gordon as well throughout this. You think back to the original movies, he was just a very secondary character, nothing too major in the universe. This series has made Gordon a character, made Gordon something. So again, I love this opening sequence because, as you said, it developed multiple people throughout it.
Gordon,
yeah, and I like it's Drake using that sort of direct action that social activists have been talking about for decades, and so he's just taken that to the next level and empowered his neighborhood to stand up in a way that isn't going to bring the full force of the law down. And you're right, Jim, I do like that we are seeing Gordon is, as we go through, we see that Gordon's feeling guilty and feeling compromised because of the relationship he has with Batman. But at the same time, we see he's still a good cop. He's a good cop, but maybe he's just at the end of his rope, and he sees Batman as an easy way to get things under control, especially now that costume villains are popping up everywhere. Batman is the costumed undercover detective almost that he can rely on to take those people down while he deals with the smaller but in some ways more important stuff. So I love that we get to see Jim, yes, as compromised, but he's still a good cop. He's always going to do the right thing.
Brett, I think you're nailing it because his morality is really important here because we have to, with where this story's going for him, we have to really like him. If it's something that the 89 films didn't have a lot of chance to breathe with, you got to see it more in the second film than the first film, the development of Jim Gordon. They didn't really have a lot of chance in their storytelling to really flesh out this character. Like I said, between the first and second movie, the second movie started to enhance it more. This was really critical because there's two ways this can go. You can either be ambivalent to this Jim Gordon because he hasn't really gotten a lot of screen time and you don't know him, or you can do scenes like this where we're seeing what he stands for, where he's standing up. We're already ticked off at Harvey at this point. We get to see what Drake has done in this situation, and Gordon stepping in as a leader and going, "Hey, I told you not to do this, you moron, and this is why." I mean, it really says a lot in those moments where you take a moment to say, "We've got to remind you why you like Jim Gordon, why he's different than the police force that we're seeing here, and what he's fighting against," because why he's built this relationship with Batman and what that's all about really stands out in situations like this where you see what he's got a whole force that's working against him. I mean, and that's a challenge when you're trying to move the needle in Gotham, which is what he and Batman have been doing together as partners. And you have to believe in that for where this story's going. And I thought they did a really good job in this story of, without derailing your main story of what's going on with Two-Face and Batman and everything else, of developing this character, which it's hard to do because there isn't a huge template from those two movies to work with. There's a sequence here with Drake when he's on that rooftop on the gargoyle and you see him with his hand, across his face. I'm actually doing it right now, which is not a great thing to do when you're recording. But he looks so cool. When you were saying that Damon Wayans was potentially going to be Drake on film, I would have loved to have seen what that looked like and see that play out, because this visually is awesome. It's another great sequence where the black cape works, and that is the Tim Drake cape style, which really looks sharp here when you see that sequence.
And the way he's saying, stay out of my damned house. Is very much that Batman, no, Gotham is my city. It's my city, my rules. And Drake here is saying exactly that. Hey, this is my neighborhood. It's my rules. You just stay out. Don't even think it, man. I love that framing. It's brilliant.
Yeah. It's funny. You go, one of the things that, got me, I'm agreeing, nodding my head along with all of you guys. Then when you flip the page, you once again get these great Bruce and Alfred moments.
Yep.
And I absolutely love that. And again, even artwork, little subtle stuff added to it. Just, the playfulness of the cat that he's holding. The fact that we see the underside of the costume, where it's got the heart monitor, it's got the various, tech stuff underneath the armor. It's little stuff like that is what I really appreciated in this series, and that it gave us expanded a little bit more on what the Batman '89 Bat costume was. It wasn't just a rubberized thing that restricted his movement. You can see all these type of monitors. You see all this type of electronics built underneath it to help him do his thing. It's little subtle stuff like that is what I loved about this.
He's giving that cat bacon.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a spoiled cat. I think what I really enjoy about this sequence is we're seeing here that it's Alfred that's gone and done the detective work. Alfred's been the one that's searched through the newspapers and gone and got the microfilm, and he's the one that's actually figured things out. Later on, as we keep alluding to, we have someone being Oracle and getting the information from, the various computer databases and that sort of thing. And it's really interesting because this Batman doesn't seem to be the world's greatest detective. Other people around him are the ones that do that sort of intel gathering. They give that to him, and he then goes out and acts upon it. And I find that a really interesting way to have. Alfred's usually just the guy who's there to give Batman some sarcastic wisdom, or to sew him up when he's injured or something like that. This Alfred is much more involved because he is doing the detective work, and I like that. Yeah, this isn't our detective Batman. He's more of I'll take the action and other people will do that aspect. And I like that that's a different take on Batman. This isn't our comics bloke. This is 89, and this is how he is developed.
You can see, too, how that detective work and things like that, like, I always liked the idea of Alfred being a mentor. One of them, because Bruce did, the training, obviously, we know, around the world and things like that. In the comics I'm talking about. There was, my favorite stories are the ones that allude to the fact that Alfred brought a lot to the table, too, with his training and the way that he grew up. The Pennyworth series, I think, does a really great job of fleshing out, like, some of Alfred's background. It's great to see, like, how that translates well here, where Alfred isn't just this, to your point, he could be just like this comedic element with quips and things like that. It's not. He's essential to the whole operation. That works for me really well because Alfred just being that figurehead, and it separates it too to a certain extent from 66, because 66 he was a part of the process as well, but we didn't see him doing a lot of the detective work and things like that. He was more covering for them. I mean,
yes.
In what he was doing. And I'm not saying I loved 66, so it's not a knock on it. Yeah. What I loved about this was, though, they didn't feel beholden to follow what they did in 66. It was more of a, what story are we telling here, and how are we advancing the Batman story, and who should Alfred be in this world? I like the differences. I like that it's not 100% the comics. I like that it's not 100% what's come before in media. It's really embracing the fact that how can we move this Batman into a more mature storytelling. What they were doing in 89 was really cutting edge for superhero films in general. And I think we're getting the movies that we're getting today because this film started to move that forward. You can make the same argument for the Christopher Reeve Superman films. Like you can see, like, historically pivotal points where they started changing the game on how we look at films. Like the 70s had their own thing with Superman. We had this in the 80s, and now we're getting what we get today. And our expectations as far as what a quality superhero film should look like, I don't think would be the same if we didn't have films like this. So it's cool to see where this could have potentially gone.
Yeah, undoubtedly. This very much announced to the world that superheroes aren't silly. They don't have to be silly. The tagline, Superman, you will believe a man can fly, is just, it was a wonder at the time to see that. And then to have that follow up 10, 12 years later, but still to have that followed up with this serious Gothic-inspired Batman. Oh, yeah, it just set the foundations for what we now have. It says, yep, you can, but you will believe what we're showing you, that these things can happen, but at the same time, we can make it a little bit grim and gritty at the same time. It can be both wonderful and a bit dark, and yeah, no, you're right.
Barbara trying to reach out to Harvey in these sequences I thought were really good, where, you know, she still hasn't quite seen how far he's fallen, hasn't really had a chance with everything that's going on. Now to really talk to him and see where he's going, I like how she handles it. Like, this is a really good handling of Barbara Gordon, because she's smart. She recognizes the situation. She's immediately reaching out for help because she knows that, like, we've got a problem here, Houston. His elevator's not going all the way, and understandably so. We're talking about this guy went through a major trauma. And I thought this is really a strong handling of, you know, what anybody can go through. I mean, when you go through something horrid like that, you're not just going to pop back to center. Very few people do. Understandably so, and sometimes you can find that solace and support in loved ones and family. Other times you just can't, and you need that outside help, and that's not a right or wrong to it. I love that this was exploring that, and you see it in the dialogue between the two of them, where this is a gradual building of what's going on in his head, the divided, you know, in between the two different, like, he's got two different continuities going on, where he's recognizing the coin toss leads to path A or path B, and he's actually playing out those paths in his mind, and we're seeing the foundations of it right here. And that's why the coin is so essential to him. It is fantastic how this plays out, and the art did a great job with Barbara's reactions, going from initially to concern to shock, and it was just a really great build.
Oh, God, yeah. Again, character development, people, again, this is Barbara Gordon. It's not going to be our Barbara Gordon that we're used to, but you still see the strength of character that is Barbara Gordon. And I love the fact that we are getting that, you know, in this character, in this version of Barbara Gordon. We're still getting the same vibes we've had throughout all our comic book reading. She's just has different experiences leading up to this point, different things dealing with it, you know. And I do love, you know, as you said, the artwork dealing with that. But then again, when she's calling to Bruce, she calls, you know, does a phone call to Bruce, you can kind of see a little dejection in her, you know, and just her body mechanics. You can tell in the phone, it's Harvey. It's bad. It's bad. You know, you can kind of hear that, you know, and I love how they really played that, where you have this strong person who can have these moments where she's reaching out to her friend for help. It further adds on down the line when she learns the truth about her friend, that really is going to escalate and really gets you going, you know, gives you that, oh my God, moment that she had. I love how this sets up stuff that happens in issue 6.
Yeah, and it's also, her reaction is just very much that the loved one who believes that their love and their strength will be enough to get this person through it, but then coming up against that harsh reality that the person who is injured and who has the trauma, they need to work on it as well. And no matter what you do, unless that person is willing to meet you halfway and start to heal and get over things, it's just not going to happen. So that, yeah, the pose where she's on the phone to Bruce, you're right, man. That, like, she is just so dejected, and it's just that despair that, look, what can I do? I can't do anything. Hey, maybe Bruce can, because Bruce is also a friend of Harvey's. Hey, maybe together we can do something. And the whole thing with the coin and Harvey saying, I must have one true destiny. The universe is keeping me alive for a reason. I know I can get that by flipping the coin, and I will find it. It's the wrong way to handle what's happened to him. But you can see just how powerful it is in his mind, and how he thinks that if he commits to this, he's not quite rejecting Barbara, but he's very much in his own mind. It's, no, I've got the answer. Doesn't matter what you tell me. Yes, I love you, but I've got the answer. You can't tell me. It's all about this. It's all about the coin. And the look on her face when he flips the coin, it's devastating. The realism, again, just adds such depth to this, the way things are playing out.
His escape means more, too, because we're already in that place. We're emotionally in that place. He commits this escape, and you know it's because he's losing. I mean, he's completely heading down a path right now. It adds something when he finally gets a really good look at what's happened to his face. He really, you see why he goes, there's somebody else inhabiting me. There's something else here. There's a secondary person, a secondary path. And it like cements it. You know, you almost, that look where his real face is like in the shadows, I thought was just a great art choice, because you really get to see that secondary personality stand out, and the other side of the coin. And I love thematically that just becomes such a thing here. We talked about the handling of the Tommy Lee Jones Two-Face in the previous episode. I liked all these movies, so I don't want to spend a whole lot of time, totally trashing the other ones. But boy, it was much more cartoony. And if you were to ask me my preference on the screen, what I would have liked to have seen, oh my gosh, it's this. I mean, it's not even like close.
No way.
I mean, I rewatch all of these films. I enjoy rewatching all of them. I enjoy rewatching the Clooney film. But as this went on, there was like a decline in the serious tone. I think 89 started out with a more serious tone to it. I thought Batman Returns kept a similar sort of tone to it. But as the films went on, certainly the villains got a lot more over the top in their handling, and that did detract from the atmosphere that I think, and the tone that was set. This very much like almost escalates it in another direction of like really taking a look at the psychological aspect of these villains in a very mature and smart way. And I really appreciated this handling. This so much more is what I would have liked to have seen.
Yeah, definitely. And the way when we see Two-Face for the first time, and we get a totally different voice now. Mm-hmm. So it's not just the normal faces in shadow. Here is Two-Face. We're now hearing Two-Face's voice. So Harvey has had that split.
Yeah.
And just the fact, and this panel reminded me of the Batman the Animated Series, when we see Harvey for the first time as Two-Face, and it's first his face is in shadow, and then you have the lightning bolt, which lights up the Two-Face part, and then it lights again, it hits, and this time the strobe is on Harvey himself. I love the way they also use the coloration of the animated Harvey with that blue with the white hair, rather than the traditional sort of greeny or red sort of face. Just made that just visually really pop against that darkness as well. It was so well done.
The wink and the nod to the Robin I thought was really great, because we head into this really cool sequence that gives a backstory. We get to see a Bruce who now, through the microfiche and things like that he was going through, you see that Alfred's a big part of that piece. He's now doing some reading up and finding out about this kid's background. There's a connection with his family, seeing the fact that his family is responsible for the shutdown of the business that his family that Duke's family put together. And I thought that was a cool backstory, the connection between the two. And it adds another layer of responsibility that Bruce feels towards this kid. I like that building of the relationship between them. Very different take on Robin and his potential relationship. And I quite like that. I like that this became its own alternate universe with it. Drake has become a character who I've really grown to like. Even his interactions with Alfred, you could see them eventually becoming, if there was a fourth movie, you could see them becoming friends and that relationship continuing to develop as you go forward. Because the banter between them is very unique, and it's what I like about the Robin and Alfred relationship, the Batman and Robin relationship. Like, you see different layers, depending on who they're interacting with, and it helps you to get to know the character. But I really like Drake Drake's character a lot in this, and it stands out for me.
The Robin and Alfred relationship is huge, and I love how they, in this universe, they make it just as strong.
Yep.
You know, you think back to all the interactions of Dick Grayson and Alfred, Tim Drake and Alfred, even Damien and Alfred have that connection. And I always love seeing how
Jason and Alfred too. Don't forget. I mean, Jason and Alfred have a strong relationship too.
Yes, sorry, but each to be honest, I didn't read a lot of the Jason Todd Robin, so I saw Jason Todd more after the fact, his interactions. You know, when he was Robin, I really wasn't reading the book, so I didn't see that as much as I've seen the other relationships. But again, it's always a big point of who is Robin, how they interact with Alfred. And I love how, with this one, Drake is sitting there, and the opening bit where he keeps calling Alfred sir, and Alfred's like, hey, you don't need to call me sir. You should take that up with my gram, sir. And I love how he puts that sir in the end there. It's always that bit of respect. And again, it shows this is a really good kid who was raised right, who's raised with honor and integrity. And we've already seen that kind of stuff. But how he's interacting with the air quote help, really does show his strength of who he is. And that's something I always loved about the Robins, how they always have that interaction. They don't look at Alfred as a butler. Now, Bruce doesn't look at Alfred as a butler either, but the Robins really show that level of respect, that level of dealing with, because when Bruce is harder on the Robins, Alfred's there to help mitigate stuff. And you love seeing that kind of relationship. And right from the very beginning, right from jump, we're seeing that cool setup for these two.
Yeah, and I think it could be interesting the way it then plays out, because, as you both say, we very much have a respectful relationship already being built when they've really just met. I like how that interaction is being interwoven with Bruce discovering how the Waynes ruined what Winston's family had built up. If that secret, how much does Drake actually know about that? Is Drake aware of this is what happened, and this is why the family may not, is in the neighborhood they're in, and maybe don't have the wealth that they deserve after everything that's being done? What would happen if he didn't know, and then that secret was to come out? And I think it shows that we could have a potential relationship where it's more antagonistic between Bruce and Drake and Batman and Robin, but Alfred's always going to be there to smooth things over and to make sure that they function as a team, and that they are a family unit.
What's interesting is the Wayne family history as we're going forward. And I think Drake does know to a certain extent, because he obviously knows about Preston. And
of course, yes.
So, but I think to the point of this discussion, though, he never really alludes to how much he does know. So I think there's a story to be told there. And, you can't help but wonder, would this be something that further comes to light maybe in a fourth movie, as they continue to develop their relationship? Who knows? But I liked, as we're looking through the Wayne family history, we get to see those little nuggets dropped. The handling of Bruce's family portrait, I've never seen that handled quite that way. The idea that there's this family portrait that was unfinished, and the reason why, I thought that was a great way to do a wink and a nod to what we've already seen established in previous movies. And so you don't need to rehash it then. You don't need to do like a flashback sequence. We've already done that. But a reminder that, hey, this guy lost his family, and this is part of what motivates and drives him, and it is something that Drake needs to know, as far as in getting to know Bruce Wayne and the complexities of Bruce Wayne. I love the way they dropped it in this. I thought it was just a unique way to do it, because it gave a little bit of Drake's history and a little bit of Bruce's at the same time, and brought everyone up to speed. Yeah,
and again, you got to have that connection between the two, and we're getting that feeling, and each one of them understands. It's kind of, you understand where they're coming from.
Yeah, and I think it also makes the death of the parents just that much more tragic as well. It just makes it more tragic having this unfinished painting, so there's always going to be an element that Bruce is somehow unfinished because he's got that that scar of seeing his parents murdered like that, and things that were left undone and unsaid. You know, that they say that the biggest regrets are things that you haven't told the people that you love. So having that just hanging over everything as well, I think makes it more impactful to have just this mentioned than it would be to see the whole murder play out again. You know, that would just seem a little bit, oh, okay, here we go again. This just plays it up really nicely and just leaves it hanging there. Just in the background, but it's really powerful nonetheless.
I liked how Drake knows something's going on. He knows, he's convinced that he's figured out Bruce's secret, and he's trying to trip him up. He's trying to get him to reveal it. Basically, I think he's trying to figure out his own end game here in what he's trying to do. I think he's got an idea of where he wants this to go, but it's more of what does he get out of Bruce here, and what is Bruce's reaction like as far as where this goes. I love that he's convinced that, Batman exists, right? But Catwoman's a legend. And I think that was great because if you think about Selina's story, you could see why people would think that. Because her story gets pretty fantastical pretty quickly. As far as, is she alive? Is she dead? What happened with, did this character even exist at all? And I get that. And I really liked how because it fits her, this Michelle Pfeiffer version of the character where she's almost like this enigma, this legend. His way of trying to trip up Bruce was fantastic. I kind of saw it coming, in the sense that wasn't really battery acid, but it's, and when I say I kind of saw it coming, I wasn't in the foreground thinking that, but I'm like, this kid's not trying to take out his face or anything like that. It was clear he was trying to trip him up, but the quick nature of what he was doing and how fast everything was moving, it made sense why Bruce reacted the way that he did. It was a fun sequence. I really liked. This is one I would have liked to have seen play out in live action. Yeah. Seeing the two of them have that little combat sequence and what it looked like between them. Because Michael Keaton always, you saw a lot of Michael Keaton's battling happening when he's in that suit. It would have been great to see him having an action sequence out of the suit. Not that we haven't seen it, but certainly not to this extent. It would have been cool to see this.
It reminded me back to the Donner cut of Superman when Lois Lane revealed she knew that Clark was Superman by shooting him with a gun with blanks. Yeah. And when Clark doesn't react, saying, "If you were wrong, you could have killed me." It's like, no, it was always blanks. So Lois was protecting, making sure she knew. She knew who it was, but just making sure. This really went back to me on that one. I kind of had flashback to that moment. So, and I agree everything you said. I would have loved to seen that live action.
Yeah, but there's something really, really cool about the way this played out. And, Bruce is realizing at this point, all right, the jig is up. Alfred set another plate, and let's really talk this through. It was a great sequence. Selina and Barbara interacting together was something that I thought this did a really good job with, because it's setting up something that, we talked last episode about how we would like to see more of this, potentially seeing a fourth movie. And I feel like this is planting seeds. Would more and more I'm thinking to myself, they're already got ideas for this. Because I was the one who was kind of, admittedly, I was the one who was saying, I want to see a fourth one too, but I want to see a fourth one. They have a story that they want to tell. And I feel like this is starting to allude to the fact that they do have that story that they want to tell. And I like that. I like the seeds that are I would like to see more of this. This in particular is starting to build a relationship that we are only getting the tip of the iceberg in issues 4, 5, and 6 that really works. It's a great pairing. Big time.
Love this, man. I absolutely loved the birth of Oracle in this universe, and I love that it's Selina doing it.
Do you think this Oracle relationship that they're gradually developing between these two, do you think it could potentially lead to a Batgirl in this? Because we talked about, and why, so let me ask you a question. Why? Why do you think no? Because she knows, so as we know from issue 6, we know certain things that Barbara knows now. Why do you think that she would not don, why?
I think this Barbara Gordon will never become Batgirl. And I think Selena is Catwoman. So I don't think in this universe we will see Barbara Gordon as Batgirl. Now, maybe this may lead to a Stephanie or may lead to a different Batgirl in this universe, possibly. But Barbara Gordon, I don't think will ever be. She may take on the role of Commissioner Gordon and be that kind of confidant, with Batman. But I can't see this Barbara ever putting on a bat, putting on the symbol of the bat on her, and continuing on that way.
I'm not entirely convinced. I actually am not against, here's the thing. I could see it going the way that you're saying and totally see that as being a thing where, she could become commissioner and there could be some motivation for that. I guess I'm just wondering if there would be something that would drive her to do, especially the more she finds out about the situation. I would be this is where I'm now insanely curious to see if them do a fourth.
If there's a fourth movie, yeah.
Where would they go with the character?
I think Barbara would play the Commissioner Gordon role, but I can see she has such a strength of character and such a strong moral fiber. I can see something happening where Oracle Selena uncovers some more corruption that just runs so deep that it's not something that Commissioner Gordon can do anything about. So Babs almost does that Daredevil thing where she says, well, if I can't take him out in my day job, then I'll take him out in my night job. And maybe she doesn't go in as gung-ho as what Batman and Robin do, but as Batgirl, she's there as backup, and she might do some more of the legwork in terms of setting out surveillance and that sort of thing, while Catwoman's back in as the Oracle person, coordinating everybody's activities and getting all of the intelligence gathered together in one spot and then saying, okay, this is what we've got. This is where we need people to be. So I think she could be Batgirl, but I think it would need to be a massive, massive level of corruption that she just cannot face as Commissioner Gordon. It would need to be something on that scale. And it would almost be like a reverse Birds of Prey, where you have Catwoman gathering all of the intel and then sending people off to various places. I could see that playing out, in a fifth or sixth or seventh movie. Yeah. Something like that.
Yeah, and that's the neat thing about this, because I disagree, but I would if they played out if they did the story right, I would 100% be on board with that. And I think that's the strength of who Barbara is, who this Barbara is, that I could see, I got my vision on where I think she's going to go. But if they went that other route, I would be okay with it because who she is, who Selena is. I could, the mentioning of how with the Birds of Prey, with Selena Kyle as Oracle running, sending out the team. I would love to see that movie. I would love to see that story being told, especially this universe's Selena Kyle is so dramatically different than the other universes. So yeah, all that I'm like, yes, give me that. That's why I keep wanting another Batman '89 story. I want the next one.
Yeah, but I'm with you, Jim. I'm quite happy to see Barbara just as Commissioner Gordon. But I think I said earlier, maybe we'll get a Renee Montoya coming in to sort of redeem Harvey. She might be the one that ends up saying, you know what, I can't just do this as the only honest cop in a rotten precinct. I have to be the one that does the vigilantism. So you have, again, a different motivation for becoming a vigilante, while Barbara is still just straight up. She's Commissioner Gordon. Again, I'm thinking way off page, and the way that she interacts with Renee as a police officer and vigilante, and all of those things. I could just imagine so many different scenarios, and I'd be happy to see all of them play out.
I think you're hitting on what I like about
Montoya as Batgirl. I would love that. I absolutely 100% love that. Have Renee done on the Bat costume. That would be wonderful.
I think you're both hitting on what I like about this, though. I don't think there's one set path. I'm like, there's nothing I'm reading here that, when I look at Barbara, or really any of these characters, that gives one prescribed set path to them. Like, this has to be that person's path. I think story and circumstance makes these characters very malleable. And I think that's something that's well crafted with them. You see these three-dimensional characters that can go one way, and it will work very well, or it could go another way, depending on where they're going to go story-wise with them. And I think that's something that's really, really interesting. And I think the idea of, like, I wasn't thinking Renee Montoya as Batgirl, but could that be a cool thing? Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. We don't have Renee Montoya. So, I mean, we're already prescribing a pathway for a character that does not exist in this as of yet. So, I mean, that could be a character that may or may not even be introduced. It's funny, whether or not that character actually would be introduced really changes a potential pathway, doesn't it? Because we're talking about the redemption of Harvey. We're talking about where Babs could go. We're talking about all that. And a lot of that's hinging on a character who's not in this. I mean, so it does go to show, like, something as simple as dropping that character in and fleshing that character out could lead to one path. If that doesn't happen, then who gets plugged into those potential spots? And what does that look like? Would it be an original character? Because we've got Drake, who's an original character for this. So what does that look like? And I find that intriguing. That, like, I would, and by the way, let me echo, I would love to see Renee in this. So I think that there's a lot of potential for where this story goes. But what does a Batman 89 Renee Montoya look like? That's something that would be very fun for them to flesh out. This is great. I mean, this is the part that I love. You're talking about off the page, Brett. I think that's when you're really getting invested in a story, is when you're starting to go there and go, I've now taken I mean, Jim, you're doing it too. I mean, you know, where you're taking yourself all in on pathways where you're like, but this is my story. And this is where I'm in on my story, and this is what I'm sticking to. And I think that's a sign of investment, right? Where you've chosen your own adventure, so to speak.
Yeah, we flipped the coin, and this is what came up heads. Yeah. Yeah.
Harvey's escape was real interesting, where you're seeing him again make choices along the way, where, you know, he's knocking out the police officer, and he's talking to himself, where you've got good Harvey and scarred Harvey that are, you know, really debating things out, where, you know, Harvey's like questioning, like, you're taking us further down this path, like, you're giving us a point of no return. I really liked that Harvey was even questioning himself along the way and what was happening. And the scarred version of him was basically saying, listen, you see how they look at us right now? We don't fit in anymore. We're outside of society. We can't fit into their world. The only way for us is to be underground. And it sets this whole phase. And I don't know that I have an arc. I could see where he's at right now. It adds to what Barbara was seeing earlier. He is going further and further down a rabbit hole that you could see how he got here. And that's something that I think is really, really strong in this. I feel for the character, because he's hitting a point of no return. It's a sad state, because we all, like, I believed in Harvey Dent. I mean, especially the first 3 issues of this, I think it's really important, because this means more now because of where I was at with the character.
And I loved how when Harvey goes down to the sewer system looking for a base of operation, and he comes on the old, what was supposed to be the Burnside stop for the train.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be a way for that neighborhood to be able to connect with downtown, really help with the job boom, with everything like that. But it never happened. It never went through. The money fell through. Part of it, they didn't want to make it easier on the people from Burnside to get access to the good jobs. They got to do 2 bus transfers just to get to the heart of downtown instead of one single train stop that was already built. All they had to do was just finish it up. All they had to do was just make the connection go, and they didn't. It further does show just, again, the corruption against them. And it's Harvey knew about this, you know, but he kind of blocked it out of his mind when he started hanging out with the good crowd. This is where he and his friends used to hang out with. So evil Harvey remembers it. Good Harvey goes, oh, yeah, now I remember this place. And I love just, again, the usage of the evil Harvey, who has, you know, all the same knowledge, but who's able to access it and bringing this stuff up. It does make them 2 separate people, and it's a really cool. Again, we see that with Two-Face, but I really do love how this is handling it. I would love to see, again, we've said it multiple times, I'm going to keep saying it, I would have loved to see this version of Two-Face on the screen.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And this subway thing, I'm sorry, I'm going to get really boring now because I've got so much to say about this one subway scene. The fact that we've got the station that was almost ready to take the neighborhood into the city and to really, the future was there in front of them and the future dried up. It's a statement about Harvey himself. Harvey was poised to be the DA, and as we saw in his little dream sequence, Governor Dent, and this bright future was all laid out in front of him, and there was just one more connection to make, but because he's become Two-Face, that future's dried up. That future is now gone. So playing with that whole psychological side of things, and I'll do a little bit of amateur psychology here. I'll use my degree for something useful for a change. The whole idea of your unconscious being below your normal conscious mind, it's like the subway of the brain almost. And in that subway of the brain, the unconscious, you have your id, which is your dark passions and your dark urges and all of those things that are the temptations and the desires and the things that will take you off track. That's where they all lurk. And now we've got Harvey underground in that space, in that unconscious, where his id is literally on display through half of his face. And that just that panel and the way it's all explained, I think if you could take any one panel out of the comic to say this is what this comic series is about, it would be that. I think it's just a perfect encapsulation of everything that we're seeing in the issues before and what's to come after. It's magnificently done. The
dinner with Drake and Bruce was really interesting because you get to see Drake, trying to get the backstory, and explain how he figured things out and stuff like that. But also, Bruce asked a great question. So if you had this all figured out, why didn't you just turn me in? And you see a Drake who's like, listen, I figure you're trying to make amends here. And he's actually, in his own way, recognizing Batman as a potential symbol and how he can help with that cause. He's trying to partner up with him, but he also was tipping his hat the fact that, I gotta admit, I think some of this is cool. He does the fanboy thing that we would all do, right?
Yeah.
I want to see the car, man. and I loved that sequence because he didn't start with that. He's like, we can talk philosophy all night, but he's like, but I want to see the car. And there was something really great about that sequence. And, as they're walking down the stairs, he goes and asks Bruce the question, did you ever, want to be normal? And he's like, yeah, sometimes. It passes. I love that humor. It's something that is a trademark of especially the early films. I think there's a balance in superhero movies in general of humor where there's a line, right? Where you want humor in there because if it's so hitting your head over with just nonstop seriousness, you lose some of that energy, right? That there is a fun factor to all of this. If you do too much of it, it becomes slapstick, and we've seen that happen in our films, right? Where it's too over the top, and now you start losing this grounded believability. I thought this did a really good job of adding in those moments where, like, yeah, that was kind of a cool comment. He's walking down, and made it fun and a chuckle. Because you didn't take it slapstick when they do get down to the cave, it is nothing but cool. The whole guano comment was funny and things like that. The cycle, it reminded me of what I loved about these movies when I saw it in the theater for the first time. The first movie with the Batwing, when that was introduced, It was so cool because I mean I love the Batmobile in that one. The Batwing was like this other addition where it's like, oh yeah, he's got that other cool gadget. I loved when they flew up in front of the moon and did the bat symbol thing. There was some really cool choices. The idea that if this was continuing, we'd get a cycle eventually, and the cycle would have a lot of the tropes and things that we've come to love about the Batmobile, but it's a cycle now. And it looked cool and unique too. Like this would be something coming down the street that not only does it protect its driver, but it's like you want to get on that thing. I mean, the design of it was really, really clever. Very much connected to the Batmobile, which I always liked, but yet its own thing. I mean, it was really, really the right time to introduce this. We're 4 issues in now. At the end of the issue, we're introducing yet another gadget that, I want to see. And the cliffhanger of this one I thought was a good one because sometimes you force an issue to have like this death-defying cliffhanger. And no, this one left you with, you want to see where the story's going to go next without having to do that. And I thought it was a good choice. Because if you overdo it, it's kind of like, okay, you forced in a cliffhanger here for where would you put a cliffhanger for this? On that level. This was handled differently than some of the other issues, and I thought it worked really well for this issue.
Yeah, I mean, the whole Batbike 89, that's the perfect accessory to go with your Drake Wilson Robin action figure, like they just fit. And you just know that inside that canopy of the bike, there's a heads-up display that has targeting systems for whatever missiles can pop up out of the wheelbase there, and it's got a targeting map that will shift as the environment shifts, and it probably goes into infrared or something as well. Like it's such a cool piece of tech, and that whole line of Drake's like, I'm going to need a helper. And then the next issue blurb saying it's Robin and Batman the Man Wonder. Perfect way to end the issue, hey?
The cover for issue number 5, we want to talk about covers. First of all, very much the Michelle Pfeiffer, Selena Kyle. And we talked about this at length on the last episode about how the artwork really did a nice job of, it's not photorealistic, nor did it need to be. They captured the right elements of the actors that were playing these characters and did it. I mean, it's just really, really sharp. I appreciated the fine detail of the one cat looking up at Batman. Because I thought that was just a really, really... Because we see the shadow of the bat there. But that little tiny attention to detail was something that I thought was just... It was a really cool choice. Because you see the shocked cat looking up there. I thought it was just a really cool... Because covers... My favorite covers are the ones where you really see an artist that gets clever with it. There's a lot of fine details in this particular cover piece that really stand out for me that just made this just an interesting piece. And I really liked this cover a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I was so focused on the way that Hello There became Hell Here. It took me until the read today when I was going through this for the 20th odd time to realize that, that's what the cat's looking at. It's the bat. I did not see the shadow there until I did think, man, it was one of my boys said, hey, Dad, why is the cat looking up? And, I don't know, actually. Oh, now I do. There's so much going on. And storytelling covers like this, I love those as well.
Well, I think a point you're hitting on is where rereads are so important, right? When you start going through, it's great that you can go back through. I'm a big fan of the classic movie Airplane. And it's like every time I watch it, I catch some little visual gimmick or some form of pun or something like that I'm like, I think I remember that. I don't know if I do. Something they did on a magazine rack or something like that. I love those tiny details. I get the same thing out of comics when I do multiple read-throughs where there's little details, especially with art. I find that your artists do really try to drop Easter eggs and little tidbits in there that are things that in your cursory read, they're very easy to miss. Covers are this cover's a great example of that, where it's not till later that you start catching details that your eyes didn't let you go to before. And I love that. I mean, there's a lot of value in revisiting these books. I will say to anybody listening to this, if you don't revisit your comics, do yourself a favor. I mean, especially with costs nowadays, and that's not me digging on comics as far as costs. They cost a lot to produce. The value of going back and catching the things that you missed, I mean, just adds to the experience. So whenever possible, do yourself a favor, at least with your favorite stories, go back and revisit them again, because there's a lot to catch that you haven't caught before. I know I never catch everything the first time through.
No way.
Nope.
No.
This story kicks off with Harvey doing an interrogation, Harvey style. And we're going to be clear, it's Harvey Dent, not Harvey Bullock. And this definitely has very much a my three Harveys, I guess you would say, in this one. I was going to say my two Harveys, but it's technically a third, depending on how you want to look at it. But this is an interesting sort of interrogation that's going on here with the with this whole sequence. I love that, Harvey's like basically saying, hey, you were ripping off money here and you were going to get $1 million for this. He's like, so what do you want? You want a shot like a double or nothing? And he's like, why would I do this for nothing? And double or nothing sounds really good for me. Now, in his case, that 50-50 chance worked out to his advantage.
Yep.
Yeah. Yes, it did.
The thing I loved about this sequence was, it really started this introduction of why would somebody put $31 million in 2 armored cars? It's like they were just asking to be knocked over, and it was something I hadn't even thought of until reading this. Like, why did they do that? Because you just accepted it in when you first read it, like, okay, that's going to be the big plot thing. They're bringing in for the Bat to come in to foil it. No, he does all that damage. Is he really Menace or hero? What is he? And I wasn't thinking of Swerve. I wasn't thinking of there was some other side bet going on, that the reason they did this armored transport, the true reason they did that. And I loved how this was the introduction to that concept. This was the beginning thought of where the swerve is going to happen. For me, again, the brilliance of the storytelling.
Yeah, I can't agree more. The storytelling on this one was really brilliant as far as that goes. I like this idea of gangs, where the gangs are there's no real Joker gang. His boys are mostly in jail or dead, so that crew that we originally saw isn't really a thing. These are people that, there's different categories of people that are dressing up as the Joker for different reasons. And I like that idea. They've been inspired, and some of them don't even know enough about the original Joker or the original Joker gang to even know what they're symbolizing. It's more of they're taking advantage of something that was a thing. I like that concept of, because it adds to that idea of what is Batman symbolizing, what are these villains symbolizing when they're there, and how people can misinterpret them and get them wrong, or misinterpret them and take them in a whole different direction. So I loved how henchmen are handled in this. To see a bunch of Joker dressed up goons hanging out with Two-Face makes so much sense with how they outlined it in this. These wind up being an easy way for him to get a gang, and yet it's not that nonsense of now all of a sudden they're dressed up like Two-Face. Well, he's just arrived on the scene. That wouldn't be a thing yet. And I liked that choice. It was just something a little bit different in how henchmen were handled.
Yeah, and just like Harvey loves the number 2, so there are 2 tiers of the criminals. You've got the professional criminals that are doing it because they know that the best disguise is something outlandish like a clown face. And then the second group is just whatever, people that want to vandalize and watch the world burn, I guess is the way to put it. And Harvey loves his duos. So, hey, here's a 2-tiered system that he can step right into, and it gives him everything he needs. He doesn't need a Two-Face gang. He's got these gangs tailor-made and ready to go.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. It's an interesting sort of choice. Barbara and her confrontation with her dad, I thought was really interesting. I thought Jim reaching out and recognizing, hey, I need to touch base with her because things are going downhill for him, and he knows it. I mean, he's recognized that everything he's done, choices that he's made, he knows the mistakes that he's made, and I think he stands behind some of the good things that he's tried to do. But he's recognizing I need to make amends with my daughter. Like, I've got to at least let her know that I understand where I wronged her, and that I'm hopeful that what she's looking for her future actually plays off. But he's recognizing she needs an olive branch from somebody. He can make that choice. I watched an episode of Smallville recently because I've been listening to the Talkville podcast, and there's this episode where Clark and his dad are fighting. And both of them are stubbornly unwilling to, like, even when one starts to sort of extend an olive branch, the other one doesn't take it, and then that sets the other one back on the path. And it's so real and so human to family drama, sometimes friendship drama, where you've gotten into an argument about something and both want it to end, but you're not willing to be the one to fully go all in on it ending, like to take one for the team, so to speak. Jim Gordon's taking one for the team here. And I liked it because you get to see him as a dad here, where it's like, all right, what's more important to me right now, my pride or my relationship with my daughter? I don't know if I'm going to be able to repair things here right now, but I'm sure going to try. And at the very least, I'm going to let her know how I feel, let her know that I'm here, let her know that I'm sorry, that I made mistakes, and I'm taking ownership. I thought that was just a really cool character moment with him where, you can tell the writing's on the wall that he knows things are not going well from here. He doesn't know how far down he's going to fall on this, but he wants to, before that happens, do what he can to try and repair anything with his daughter. At the very least, maybe say something to comfort her in her time of need right now. And I loved this because there's so much packed into this scene. This is another one that I'd love to see on the big screen, just because I love to see actors acting this out, and bringing this to life, because it's brought to life so well in this comic that this is something I could just see this being a powerful moment. The note from Harvey, I thought, was a really cool piece in this as well, where, she's discovering this note and knows that she has to go meet him. And that she's we know as readers and living this experience with her, she's not very sure about where Harvey's head's at right now. And if Harvey's salvageable. I was glad to see her dad reach out at this point because she almost needed that rational tether. Even though she wasn't willing to meet him where he was at, you could tell that everything he was saying to her was resonating. Like, she was internalizing it. And I thought it was just a powerful sequence before her going to meet Harvey, because I think it sets her maybe foundationally in a place where she could walk into that situation with Harvey able to do what she does. Because I thought it was, I think this is a pivotal sequence.
Well, and again, this is a great sequence in who Babs is, who Gordon is, and it's one of those things that if this had been an actual movie, I'm afraid this is a scene that would have gotten cut. This is a part that would have gotten removed from the final. This would have been a director's cut version. But again, I loved how, as you said, he extended the olive branch. He's trying to do the right thing. He's trying to get back with his daughter, trying to think, and I love the fact that he did resign. He has stepped down as Gordon, as commissioner, effective Monday. He's going to be done. And he's saying, hey, I messed up with this. And I love that little bit at the end there where he says, it's the proudest day of my life, the day you joined the force. That line right there is one of the things that kind of locks me into who Babs is. Babs is a cop. She's not a vigilante. And I think, she's going to eventually, that's why I have my theory in the future of this version would be Commissioner Gordon. Maybe she would continue on the role that, her father had with Batman. Maybe she won't. I don't know. But she's going to be that honest cop. that Gotham needs as the commissioner. Gotham needs as eventually she'll be the lieutenant. She'll first be the lieutenant, then eventually commissioner, and you'll see that growth in it. I love this sequence here because, again, the artwork, it shows how Babs got her back turned to her father, so she can't see that she's breaking down here. And his words are affecting her, but she's not letting him know that. And it's a great, powerful moment in writing, and just in the artwork, did a beautiful job with it.
Yeah, you're right, and it's great how we're seeing why Babs is the way she is as well. Barbara is the way she is because Jim has that moral core as well, and he says, "I've made a mistake, and I understand that it is so terrible. I must resign, and I've done it. I'm out. Look, I've tried to do the right thing. Us idealists just get chewed up and spat out. I want you to be better." And you're right, Jim. I think that is then what is going to set Barbara up for the future, where she becomes the Commissioner Gordon, and she's almost redeeming her father's name while she does that. Yeah. No one will remember Jim Gordon as the guy who resigned because of what happened with Batman. It'll be, no, he was the first step in leading Gotham down this better path, and his daughter's taken up that mantle and run with it. So I think you're right, both right. This is such a pivotal scene.
Speaking of pivotal scenes, this one, the Batmobile, this is an example of one, too, on the big screen would be terrific. Because what a dream, right? Driving the Batmobile. I mean, he's letting him drive the Batmobile. But what we're also getting from this, too, that you don't normally get is some insight into Batman's feelings about, so they do this cool little hologram bit. And Batman's like, you would not believe the technical issues involved in generating a moving hologram. And I love that acknowledgement of, this is tech that is really advanced, that needs to be convincing. Otherwise, it's useless. So I loved that sequence, and it worked really well on a lot of layers, but man, was it way cool.
Yeah, big time. And again, leads to that neat sequence of Harvey making his move.
Yep.
Because they're driving and the cops break off the pursuit of them because something bigger is going on. And you can see the police headquarters is under attack. And I loved how this was playing out because it didn't dawn on me what Harvey was doing until we actually dived deep into it. And they actually show, I'm like, oh, okay, he's going after the money. Oh, duh, that's nice. But it wasn't just about the money. And I love the fact that, initially with this great attack on the police station, you get to see these cool, the villains doing their villain thing. You get that, that moment of the redemption of Harvey Bullock begins right here. Mm-hmm. Bullock's escaping. Gordon's like, hey, you can either go or you can do your job. And I love how Gordon, he's still going back in. He's going back up. It's the true heroes who run into the danger. And I love the fact that he gives Bullock that opportunity for his redemption. He gives Bullock that chance to actually be the cop he was. Now, minutes before, I was calling Bullock the villain of the story. Here's the chance where Bullock has to be that Harvey Bullock that we know and that we all really appreciate it and we really love as a character. I love the fact that this story gives Bullock his chance for redemption.
That's why I was asking if you saw him as a villain in this earlier. That's where I was asking the question. It wasn't like a argumentative one. It was more of I think the complexity of the character is shown in sequences like this, where that's dangled, and you do have a choice in that moment. You can either choose to keep heading down your path, or you can take that opportunity. And sometimes it's not even like a conscious choice to take that opportunity. You just instinctually do certain things. And I love that Harvey's complex. And calling him a villain in those sequences isn't wrong. It's more of is that the whole story? And that's the interesting thing about the character is I think you're totally on to who he is. And I think you're pointing out exactly what I love about the character is he's got a lot of layers to unpack, and how you label him can change from scene to scene even, which is cool.
Here's a rule with me with cops. I believe there's 3 types of personalities for police officers. You have your knights, who see it as this higher calling. The protect and serve. Gordon is a knight. You've got your warriors. These are people who have a certain skill set. You need to have a skill set to be a cop, and flat out. And then the last group are the rogues. The rogues are people who should not have a badge, whether it's because they enjoy the power, they doing it just for all the wrong reasons. They were picked on as a child, and now they're going to make sure they can pick on people. Whatever the reason, that's reasons they shouldn't have a badge. That's the rogue. Now, the interesting thing about these three categories is you can shift one way in one direction or another. The knight can sometimes become a warrior where it's just a job. It's not a higher calling. Sometimes that warrior can become a knight where it's that higher calling. But sometimes a warrior and the rogue, they can switch spots. A warrior could actually go to the dark side and become a rogue. A rogue could sometimes have those moments when they're a good cop. And that's the weird balance. You got to ask yourself, is this bad cop a rogue or are they a warrior who has the moments that go back and forth? And I think that's the really neat thing about Bullock. Those earlier scenes, he 100% was a rogue, 100% a villain. Is he really just a warrior, though? Is he not a rogue? And that for me is the really neat exploration on who Harvey Bullock is. In the regular comic book, Harvey Bullock to me is a warrior. He's flat out. He has his moments when he's a knight. He has these moments when he's a rogue, but usually he's just a good, solid cop. This Harvey Bullock, I don't know. I really don't know if he is a rogue who sometimes is a warrior, or he's a warrior who's sometimes a rogue. And I love seeing it, and I love when I get those moments when you're like, I don't know. I don't know who they are. And that's the kind of neat exploration that this story, this Batman 89, is giving me, in that they really did a great job with giving this character who earlier I 100% was calling a villain. Now I'm like, I don't know. I don't know where we're at with this. And I love that, that question's in my own head.
That's fascinating. I hadn't heard of that before, Jim. That's really, really interesting. And it's interesting because I thought this Bullock scene was a callback to the other situations where we've had things just happen and people react rather than what they do when they've got time to plan and to think things through. And we saw when that happened with Harvey Dent, Harvey, in the moment, he just ran into the building because he was the hero. Bruce just didn't have his Batman outfit or anything, but he still just put on the balaclava and off he ran. And I saw this as Harvey, and using that terminology, that framework you set up, that's really cool. So maybe when he's got time to sit down and plan and think about things, he's more swayed by the more corrupt side of the Gotham police force, and so he becomes that rogue. But at the end of the day, when he doesn't have to think and his reflexes kick in, he actually is a warrior, and he will just do what needs to be done to get the job done. So, I think that's really interesting, and it does play in really nicely, again, with the idea of choices that you make, and do the choices that you make when you have time to sit and plan, are they going to be the same as what your actions or your choices will be when you just have to act, you just have to react? That's very, very interesting, man.
Brett, it's Sean. We need to talk about Jim. He's talking about people sometimes in dualities and even triplicates. He might be our three-face.
That is awesome, man. Nice. The sensei of the whatnot, the bringer of the magic, and now the bringer of the two-face.
Yeah, the three-face of the podcast. And the three-face of the podcast.
The three faces of the sensei.
Awesome, man. Now, see, that's a movie I want to see. Three Faces of the Sensei.
Dude, I live it. It's
like... That's so good. I love you guys. That's brilliant.
Jim Gordon has that great sequence that you're talking about with Alfred, but then it leads into this really cool sequence about the cycle. I thought it was so neat where Bruce is like, the cycle. Alfred, we may need it ready and all that. And, and he's like, I thought you said the cycle wasn't ready. He said, let me translate that for you. You're not ready. And I like that he goes right away, Alfred, we need the cycle. Of course he's going to say that. I liked that banter because that is such a Batman and Robin thing where Batman's always the conservative one where he's like, listen, I can use this crazy tech, but I'm not willing to let just anybody use this tech. You got to be ready to use that tech. I love the way that the cycle's deployed, where Alfred's not even hesitating. He's like, I'll get that out. Here's where it's going to be. Yep.
Yeah.
I like the idea that Alfred can remotely, because we saw that with the Batmobile in these films. And I thought that was something that was so cool, that Alfred's able to be, we mentioned like the Oracle idea before, but Alfred being this person that can deploy equipment to locations, I thought was something that was really cool. Because you often wonder, like, how does Batman get to this stuff? How does this stuff get to Batman if he's out in the field and all of a sudden needs it? This movie series really did a great job of focusing on that concept that Alfred's that guy. He can do that. He can get that stuff there. He's not just like, Bruce doesn't just leave and then Alfred goes and like binge watches shows. Alfred's like sitting at the control console and like providing advice, providing help, providing support, and when necessary, deploying equipment to save time. Because imagine Bruce being like, oh, I'm sorry, I can't save anybody right now. We have to go back to the Batcave for the bike. It kind of changes the tenor of things. I loved that idea of just a little wink and a nod to the fact that this stuff can be deployed by somebody else. That was cool. This confrontation sequence with where Bruce ends up saving Jim Gordon, I thought was really, really great. Seeing, again, that relationship, his protective nature with Jim Gordon. I kept thinking, that this was just going to be the way that it goes. I loved the idea of the cape being a glider.
Yeah.
This movie series really did a great job of introducing that concept of how the cape could be used. And that continued on and being something that was, it made a functional sort of component to it. And I really love the visual look that the artist did with that sequence with him, with Jim Gordon. There was just something really cool about it. And the idea that Drake and him have split up now, and Drake is now doing certain things while Batman's doing certain things. Like the idea of showing a true partnership where Drake isn't just a tag along. There's a role that he's playing in this whole sequence.
And it's neat in this fight sequence. You start to see the thugs and the goons all have that Two-Face kind of motif to them now.
Yeah.
Again, we talked earlier about how with the goons and and all that, how they were the Joker goons and this and that. They wouldn't initially have that. Well, now with the job, they would have it. Now they're part of the Two-Face crew, so they're shifting their look to have that Two-Face kind of styling to them. I thought that was a neat touch to have with these villains, with the just simple goons, simple background characters, but they gave them a really neat look to them. I liked it.
And I like how the masks that they're using are devil masks as well. So, like, their faces are covered, so that's their evil side coming. That's their evil side as well. And Sean, with the cape, the way the cape is drawn, makes the silhouette of Batman is now that of a bat. It is a giant bat with the ridges and almost the talons and everything as well. It's just nicely done. And the way that Robin and Batman, Drake and Batman they trust one another already. I find that really interesting because Bruce has seen Drake in action, so he knows that he's capable. There's no need to be a little hesitant about, well, can he handle this? Is he going to be able to do what I need him to do? That trust is there immediately because of all of the things, again, that we've seen through the series. It's building up to this moment where not only do we know as an audience that Drake can kick it as Robin, Batman knows that as well. That's so nice.
Harvey's heroic moment was good to see, leading to the confrontation with Two-Face. I like that the Batarang that we saw in the previous issues like came back, that Batarang. We had that cool sequence with Harvey and Barbara with playing around with the Batarang. I like that wasn't like a throwaway. Like they came back later on and had a, now because of the fact that he was shocked by it so many times, he now
he knows how to use it.
Yes, and it was a cool, like, endearing sequence between him and Barbara that now has come back later on and has some meaning to it. In this, to your point, Jim, about things being cut sequences if this was done as a film, I go back to now in the day and age of like HBO Max miniseries and stuff like that. I would so love to see this done as an HBO Max animated movie. And the reason why I say animated, I suppose you could, with the fact that it's an older Batman now, you could have Michael Keaton do it if he was interested in doing it. At the very least, though, I would love to see this as a like 6-part animated feature where there's no need to cut anything because you're doing it as an animated, multi-part animated feature, and you could delve some of this, because I think some of the earlier sequences, maybe with Barbara and Harvey, would have been cut. This Batarang one means so much more because that sequence with Harvey and Barbara was there. Like, there's a nice wink and a nod to that. I like the idea of the tracking dart, too.
Yeah.
Where
yeah,
it looks like Batman kind of lost there, but, like, loss for Batman, doesn't mean the end of the story. There is a little nugget that's dropped there that allows him to be able to follow up on this. This case isn't over yet. There's more for them to do.
Yeah, it's funny. Just as Harvey had schemes within schemes within schemes to get to his ultimate goal, Batman's always got scheme after scheme after scheme to make sure that no matter what happens, he can't lose. He does lose for a moment, but as you said, he's got that little gadget built in, so the case continues. I love that about Batman. What is it they say in improv? You fail forward, so you never fail, and it stops things. That Batman's the ultimate fail forward improv dude.
Yeah.
Again, I loved how, as we're all talking about the tracking dart, I like the fact that Gordon either realizes what's going on with the dart. Again, it's showing that this Gordon isn't just the puppet piece. He's actually still is also a good cop. And he's got the tracking dart in his hand, and he's the one who plants it on Harvey Dent. He's the one who drops it so it hits Harvey Dent. So Harvey now has the tracker. So now knowing, either he knows Batman so well that he would know that there'd be some type of tracking in it, or Bruce has told him in the past that he's done that. Who knows what kind of relationship this Gordon and Batman have. But again, it was a neat little sequence that it was played right along with that brilliant banter, again, between Harvey and Gordon. And again, he's talking to not Two-Face, he's talking to Harvey Dent. He's trying to reach the guy who he knows is in there. He's trying to get a hold of that Harvey Dent, the guy who's going to marry his daughter, the man who is this great DA. And I love how, again, showing that Gordon isn't just some idiot. He's actually working at trying to get what he can.
Yeah, that part is really interesting. I like the idea when we see back to Mr. Otis's town, like the reconstruction, like trying to get the R back on his, R keeps coming back. And I really love that there's an interesting backstory to that whole sequence when you see it. This story does a really good job of when there's characters that are important to the story that have not been on screen, bringing them back so you remember who they are, what they're doing, where they are now, like a status check. But they're quick little nuggets, like right at the appropriate times, that add kind of a sense of... Because part of the story of this is, what was Harvey crusading for? Even the duality of Harvey, where Harvey's upbringing was, and Harvey the politician. Harvey the politician, for lack of anything else. There's that duality. Harvey's life's been filled with dualities, right? And there was that piece of him as, almost he stepped away from his upbringing, but yet he's trying to reconnect with that, so they would be like his constituents. And they were even calling him out a little bit on the fact that, listen, just don't forget you're one of us, and this is your home, this is your roots, this is your foundation. Harvey's life's been filled with duality, and I like that interesting statement, right? Because I think we all, kind of struggle with that piece of where we came from versus where we've gone. And that balance, I think there's a message there that's real interesting.
Yeah, and it shows to some degree that it was never about the money for Harvey.
Right.
It was a way to get other people in on the crime, but the money itself isn't important. It's what you do with the money that's important. And the money is just a way for him to give back to the neighborhood without having to do all of that mucking around and compromising and politicking. He could just say, hey, if we need money, I can just take it and give it back.
Which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, and it's funny because you see the different people that it's affecting. The one guy's business is about to go under. No, he's now saved. The family that's struggling, they're now saved. And again, he's putting it back into Burnside. And it does show that Harvey Dent does care about his people. Now, the path he's going about it, the reason he's doing it, what he's doing, right, wrong, that's where do the ends justify the means.
Yes.
And later on we see with Mr. Otis, they don't, because that's his personal moral code. He knows what Harvey's doing to get that money, and he's against it. And that eventual coming up is absolutely brilliant scene. But going through this, I love how this is initially playing out, where we've got the tracker now on deck. Bruce knows it's on deck. Bruce is following. We've got Drake following. We've got the cops all there. We've got Barbara. They're gonna basically put the cuffs on Harvey because she is a cop first and foremost. It's the right thing to do. I love how all this stuff plays out, where you have this. Again, you keep going back to the choices you have to make. Do you accept the crooked money? Do you arrest Harvey, or do you try to help him get psychological help? What do you do? I love how each one of these are played out the way they actually come to fruition, where it does so 100% fit these people. I already know who they are. I already know how they're going to react to it. And I love the fact that I'm seeing exactly what I thought they would do. I 100% always thought Barbara was going to try to arrest Harvey. During this meeting, throughout all this, I knew flat out, even before Drake, sent out the comment saying, "Hey, there's cops all over the place." I 100% knew she was ready. She brought him in because she was going to bring him in.
No, you're right, Jim. I think what I really like about this is that it is showing us that Barbara Gordon has that moral code and that moral core that her dad has given to her. And even if it's the love of her life, that's not enough to shake her moral core. There is nothing. She's incorruptible, and she will always be that until Harvey says, "Oh, yeah, but, well, I've got your father." And that's then enough for her to – she's that knight character, I guess. She's the knight sort of police officer where she will say, "Yep, no, I'm taking you in. Oh, but wait, you've got my father. Well, I have to protect him. I'm the protector type. So, okay, that might be enough to back off. I still want to arrest you, but I want to make sure my dad's safe first."
What's interesting for me is when we look back at that sequence where Jim is captured and he and Harvey are going at it. He flips the coin on Jim, and we see this happen multiple times where he flips the coin and the coin comes up in Jim's favor. And his belief in the coin is just kind of like, well, okay, he goes the nice route. But he could have killed him right then and there. What I loved is during that, Jim has palmed already the dart. Knows that the dart is a way to track where he's at. And I like that he recognizes the best thing you do with the dart right now is somehow get it on Harvey, so that way Harvey can be tracked. So he knows to a certain extent how the bat tech works, that where they're at right now is not going to give a location. But if he gets that on Harvey and Harvey's leaving, that's going to be like a beacon. Really smart work. Like, we get to see a lot from Jim Gordon in this, and it's an interesting part because I think we did reference this before in the previous episode, that Jim Gordon just did not get this kind of screen time. And I'm glad we get this in this, because where his story goes in this, you really need this. This stuff is all pivotal because this character has to matter. He really does. This is a really good development of this version of Jim Gordon.
And it gives us a tragedy to his ending of the character. You know, because I loved how this sequence played out where Catwoman comes in, gets her frees up Harvey so he can escape. Harvey goes back to, hideout enraged that she betrayed him and this and that. So evil Harvey is now taking over, and he just flat out shoots him. Flat out just shoots Gordon, and good Harvey's like, the coin said he was supposed to live. And I loved how Gordon was like, you did me a favor. She loves you. She'd forgive you anything except this. She'll never forgive you for this. And I love just that notion and just kind of that little smile on his face as he knows he's dying right now. This is it. This is the end of Gordon. But this right here is a huge moment, that, again, Harvey loses. Both sides of Harvey are now going to lose. This is the beginning of the downfall for Harvey Dent. And it happens when he doesn't listen to the coin, when he doesn't follow the coin. I love this one single page really starts to break down the end of Harvey Dent, the end of Two-Face, and unfortunately it's our end of our Gordon, which if we didn't have all the previous issues, wouldn't have mattered. The Gordon that we had in the two movies before this, it was a neat character, but it wasn't anything that had any emotional connection to. We've got an emotional connection to this guy because we see flat out he's a good cop. He's a father who wanted to make amends with his daughter, who never really got the chance to make amends with his daughter. He reached out and tried to do it, but it still never came about. So this moment, this tragic ending for Gordon, and it's funny because at this point in time, he's shot and he's dying. But in my head, I'm always thinking, okay, are they going to actually kill him off? I don't know. In the comic book, I'd say 100% no. But in this movie universe, they kill off characters all the time. So I'm like, great ending to this issue in that you're still not 100% certain whether Gordon's going to die or not.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the deaths of characters in this. I've been okay with it in this. I mean, I want to be clear. If there's an issue I ever had with the '89 Batman and with Batman Returns, it was deaths of villains. It's like, does every villain have to die? Why I was okay with those deaths in this is that's already been established as a thing in this universe, right? Yes. It's basically, if you're a villain in this, your odds are you're not going to be around. And so I kind of accepted that as like, that's kind of how Batman 89's universe works. It's kind of a thing, but I'm glad you're bringing it up because it was something like the Joker's death in Batman 89 was something I didn't like. And I love the movie, don't get me wrong, but it was like, did they have to do that? Now, I loved how they did it. I loved the way that he fell. I loved that we had the box that was laughing afterwards. I mean, that sequence was visually stunning what they did. So, kudos. But it was not my preference. This is an interesting sort of study into how things go because you have that whole sequence with Selina, and I like that we get the nod that she's listening in on things. That whole sequence with Drake matters because it's really clear that she heard the fact that he said that she doesn't exist. I really like that reveal where she's like, I know, like we're all tempted to do that, and she like had to drop character and basically reveal in that sequence that like I've been listening on you guys because I know that this was a thing without saying it that way. I thought that was just really great.
And later, it's neat because I remember when I first read through this, when I first read issue 6, and she removes where the bug is. I did pop for that. I'm like, oh, that's how she knew. Oh, that is cool. Because I was always thinking it was with her when she plants the bug into Barbara's system, and I was always assuming it was some type of technical thing, like a computer virus kind of hack. That's how I was thinking she did it. And so I really love the fact that, we get the final story. And so, as you said, it's neat little subtle stuff. You see her sitting there listening, knowing what everything's going on. And when we later learn where the bug is, I'm like, oh, that is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, it's so cool because practically everything they set up like that does have a payoff in the end from the villain saying, "Oh, it's almost as if they wanted someone to take the money." To we know that Selena is listening in, and as we said, the Batarang thing comes back later on. Initially, it was just a cool scene between characters, but then it plays a part in the story, and the tracking plays a part. So it's very neat storytelling, and everything sort of gets to pay off in the end. And you're right, this Gordon is such a tragic character that it's almost as if the only way he can redeem himself in his own eyes, if not in everybody else's eyes, is to make the ultimate sacrifice. And so, yeah, he's dying, but he's got a little bit of a grin on his face, as you said, and it's okay. He's happy to go out like this because he knows he has won. And it's interesting that Harvey is able to act against the coin. Again, it's the whole idea of, well, how are you going? What choice will you make when all you can do is react rather than plan out your act? And Harvey's not so deep in as what he thinks he is and what we suspect he is. And so makes him that tragic character, because even at this point, he could turn away from the coin and turn away from it all, get better and get his face fixed and repair his broken mind and all of that. So it's just tragedy upon tragedy are piling up now as we lead into the last issue.
So as we kick into issue 6, the cover is an interesting one to take a look at, because it kind of is like this idea of this is the last chapter, because the survivors are all at least the current survivors are all on the cover. And one of the sequences I love the most on there is, first of all, I think this rendition of the Robin costume, when you see it, like, there's the shading and the tone and the choices that are done for this color. I mean, this is a cover. This is like really, really sharp. I love the Robin costume, and I love the Batmobile and the Bat Cycle in the bottom right-hand corner, and just how they pop in the way that this particular cover is done. This cover is pretty striking.
Oh, big time. Big time. And again, it was funny because it wasn't until more recent read-throughs that I really started focusing on the covers, and really appreciating the artwork that went into these covers.
Yeah.
This is absolutely stellar. And the variants are also really cool, but the main cover, just in itself, is something I would want on the wall for all these series.
Yeah, it's an interesting sort of look at what covers do, like really strong covers, what they do for a particular series, and these are really this benefited from having really strong covers. They're almost like movie posters in their own way.
Yes.
Which is
exactly
fitting.
What I was about to say. Yeah. And I notice as well we've got Barbara holding up the Batarang that's done so much for her and Harvey, and then for Harvey, but she's holding it almost like it's a bat symbol. So it might be a bit of a clue for movie 4 or 5 there. It's interesting.
Oh, I like I like that. That was a very cool artistic choice. That was cool. So we get Harvey basically talking to himself, and I loved the way that this opened, because I don't know how you guys read these particular panels. If you read them from left to right or up and down, it works both ways in a very interesting way, because it's very logical if you read it up and down. Like read Harvey, good Harvey part, bad Harvey part. If you read it left to right, because I've done it both ways, it reads like this battle between the two sides of him that is real interesting too. I loved that choice, that you can really read this depending on how, because I've read it like on the most recently I read it on the DC Infinite app, and I did it in the guided view where it takes you left to right, which is not how I read it previous times. And it's interesting to read it in the guided view where it's taking you panel 1 to panel 2, panel 3 to panel 4. And you're almost having this dueling banjos between the two sides of him. And it's an interesting, I don't know if they had an intention as far as how they wanted you to go, but I love that it really works both ways in a very different tone. There's a complexity to that I don't know if they intended that, but it sure works.
Oh, definitely. And it's neat that the Two-Face, this great dialogue with Two-Face, there's two different ways to read it. Because like you, I read it, side to side first time. And then, when I was doing my art read through, because I'm just looking at the overall, you're looking at the overall picture. And then my third read through is when I started looking, like, hey, what happens? And I just followed the one side and followed the other side. I'm like, oh, that is cool. That is a neat idea and a neat concept because, again, there is such the two sides of Harvey Dent, the two people in one, two completely different entities sharing one body now. It's not just the simple, coin toss Harvey. There is something even deeper. There's multiverse Harvey. There's multiple Harveys inside the one body operating at the same time. And I love just, again, we see that it's a classic Two-Face motive and a classic just, Two-Face styling. But just the way it's portrayed here is something that's really a really neat way to go with.
Yeah, I agree. And it's entirely appropriate that a Two-Face story has two different ways of reading our page.
Yeah.
And it also, I think in one of the panels it talks about the whole thesis, antithesis, synthesis. That's how the page lays out as well. You can, if you read it from top to bottom, it's then Harvey is the synthesis, the thesis, Two-Face is the antithesis, the synthesis is then when you look at the page as a whole. And it's just, yeah, I agree with you both. It's such a clever way to illustrate that we have a person that's at war with himself. It's the comic equivalent of having Gollum and Smeagol having that argument back and forth in the Lord of the Rings movie. And the way you just get that change of camera angle shows you the two sides. It's almost like that, but in that static image form. It's nicely done.
Yeah, and traditional panel on the Harvey side versus a broken up panel on the Two-Face side. Again, this is, artwork, story, lettering, all of that really playing into, the story being told. This is a full-on team effort. And, again, another brilliant page.
The confrontation between Batman and Harvey here is really strong because there's a duality of Harvey here that he's fighting, and he's actually fighting the bad Harvey. Where Harvey's sitting here, he's like, I have more power than I've ever dreamed of having, and I'm an ambitious man. None of this would have happened if you hadn't broken up that heist. So I thank you, Batman. I can't serve in heaven, but I can rule in hell. And you see him just embracing that scarred side of himself. And just knowing he's embracing how far he's fallen in that sequence, which is really interesting.
No, you're right. It is the whole serve in heaven, rule in hell is the Lucifer, Milton, Paradise Lost thing. So it's Harvey saying, nah, I know I'm never going to be good again. So, hey, I might as well be the ruler of this place that I hate. I don't want to be here, but no, well, I'm going to do the best I can.
The thing I loved in the story is also we have this moment where Harvey is embracing the dark side.
Yeah.
And he he detonates the bomb, burying the dead body of Gordon, basically, and bringing it all down on top of the bat. And then even after that, the true Harvey, recognizes, hey, that's Bruce, that's my friend. But it doesn't bring back good Harvey. There is still 100%. What's his first reaction? Get a picture. Take a picture of this. Because he's already planning what his next scheme is going to be. And how he's going to play this, how he's going to use this. So it really does show that good Harvey is no longer there anymore. There's only one Harvey now. And I think that is a kind of a really neat moment where throughout this we've always had good Harvey and evil Harvey. Good Harvey. Now we have one Harvey Two-Face. We have one body, one mind, one goal. And I love seeing that within just this little play out. Again, it's kind of a neat, just final evolution, final fall of Harvey Dent.
Heaven and hell is also a metaphor for Gotham in this sequence, because when you think about it, heaven was what he was trying to achieve at Gotham. He was trying to achieve goodness for Gotham. His crusades were to save Gotham. Now he's embracing the fact that Gotham can't be saved. And ruling hell in his mind is he's got leverage now, not just on Bruce, because to your point, Bruce is now another piece of leverage that he's got. He has leverage on a lot of power players that he is going to take advantage of. His whole move now is to basically be puppet master of these power players so that he can move forward what he wants in hell. And the metaphor for Gotham was really interesting in this. And I really liked that. There's an interesting layer to how Harvey's now viewing the city. Again, with that same, there was two paths for Gotham, as just like with everything else. I really liked that.
Yeah, man, that's genius. That's a really, really good insight. And then you have that level of when Harvey goes down into the subway station, he is literally going from heaven and descending into hell. He's like one of the heroes in the Greek myths where they go down into Hades, and Orpheus, Orpheus gets to come back out, but he can't ever have what he lost, which is Eurydice. He goes down to bring back his love, but he can't have her again. So Harvey's gone down underground, and he can't get back what it is that he has lost. So yeah, you're right, man. Such a good call. Gotham, heaven, hell, and he's locked himself out of heaven effectively. So he is going to rule in hell. Yeah.
And it's neat seeing the Drake and Selena banter. Again, Drake is that guide for us. He is, that person who's interacting with all, his interaction with Alfred was really neat. This interaction he has with Selena, but also I love when they first discover Bruce, Harvey's still on the scene. Harvey saw by the picture as Bruce. He didn't know who Drake was. He didn't know Drake was the Robin. So now Harvey's got even more intel. And again, good Harvey would use it differently than this now new pure evil Harvey, who's going to do it. He uses it his own way. But the dialogue, the banter, just that open discussion that Selena and Drake have in the car when they're getting Bruce back to Alfred, for me was a really neat eye-opener and a really neat moment that plays out later on. Again, we're seeing this evolution of Selena. She's not just the cat burglar. There is more to her in the story, and this right here is a really good indicator on where her character goes, what she's capable of doing, and why she does what she's doing. I love these moments where, because especially Drake's very realistic with Bruce. Right now, Bruce is keeping him around, one, to see if he's a danger to Bruce. Keep your friends close, but your enemies closer. Drake realizes that Bruce is doing that with him. Now, Bruce, in the end, we know is going to, see Drake as the good guy that he is, but until he can make that final judgment, he's keeping the kid close. He's seeing, giving him all the, showing him this world on what it could be, in the hope that this locks him in as a partner in the process that he's dealing with. I love just this realization that we see in Drake that he knows what Bruce is doing. Of course, Selena sees it, because she's been listening in and she knows she knows Bruce well. But it was a really cool explanation that Drake, again, showing his intelligence, he can see, beyond what's the initial story in front of him. He can look at, all the angles, look at the scam, the con, whatever you want to call it, that Bruce is trying to play right now. So he's not completely just sold on, yay, Batman, I'm Batman's partner. No, right now Bruce is evaluating him whether he's a threat.
To the point
of... You're right. And I like that. In Drake articulating that and telling Selena that, it paints their relationship in a slightly different light as well. So we know the attraction is there, but is Bruce really that attracted, or is he just keeping Selena on side because he's keeping her as an enemy closer until he figures out what she's going to be? So it shines a light on both of the relationships at the same time. And it's funny, Selena is really intelligent. She's able to see all of the angles when it comes to other people, but she can't recognize that for herself. It would have been interesting had she said, oh, yeah, well, maybe that's why he's keeping me around as well. But she either doesn't have that self-awareness or she just doesn't want to reveal that she knows that to Drake. But it's interesting the way that it puts everything in that slightly different light.
She's very smart, so I wouldn't be surprised if she doesn't recognize that's also true for herself. But I think there's a certain point between both Bruce and Selena of where there's harsh reality, but there's also denial of what the elements are of their relationship. Like sometimes it's right in front of you, but you don't want to admit it, that those things are actually there because of the fact that there's the romantic piece between the two of them. There's clearly an affection that is a part of their relationship, which you see in their banter. I really love that you get why there's multiple layers to why Bruce keeps Selena or likes interacting with Selena, because she fills him in on everything that's going on. Talk about intel. Selena's the one that's delivering, hey, here's what's going on here. That heist you broke up? Well, this is bigger than you think. She's the one that reveals to him what's in that briefcase and what it does for Harvey. So immediately brings we've seen her doing things throughout this. Now she's been revealing what information she's been gathering, what she knows about this whole thing. She could have been using that for herself, for her own good. And that's not a stretch for Selena, right? To do it in her own way. So there's an opportunistic element of Selena that's always interesting to see. I think this story skirts those interesting lines of multiple facets of many characters' personalities, and I really like the use of Selena in this because she cares about Bruce. That's very, very genuine. There's a part of her that wants to do the right thing, and does. There's also that part of her that her mode of operating, the way she would use the same leverage that Harvey is looking to use in a very different way, with good intentions, but it's certainly not the way that Bruce operates. It's what makes their relationship so interesting.
Yeah, that's true, and it's interesting because in the second film, in Batman Returns, Selena's out to get revenge on the guys that have treated her badly and have done her wrong, and they're the corrupt people that mess the world up, and she's almost doing this again, but on a much larger scale. So there could be that other element where Selena's just expanded the amount of people on her revenge hit list, and she's pointing Batman at the targets that she wants him to take down for her. Yeah. It's the wrong. It might be a good intention, but it might not be either. It's a really interesting balance, and it's cool that those themes are going through every single character and every choice, and everybody's motivations are slightly murky, I guess, except for Drake, who just wants to protect his neighborhood and do it the best way he can.
Yeah, Drake has, of all of them, probably the purest of motives. He has that true. He wants the heroes to be a symbol of something for the people to inspire to and rise up to. I love the fact that really is his mindset, his motivation behind what he's doing. Now, Bruce always had his motivation. Selena, you really do get to see in this series how it's, went from vengeance against the guy who killed her to against all the corrupt business, all the corrupt policy, all the corruption that is going on in Gotham. But the sequence I absolutely loved is after, Bruce wakes up and Selena starts filling him in on what's going on. When they have that conversation where they're talking about, what Harvey has over him now, what Harvey has over everybody. But that dialogue between the two of them where Bruce admits, hey, I looked for you. I couldn't find you. I knew there was a chance you were alive, and that's when he stopped looking, and then she came back. I love that private, personal moment, but I also love the fact that they're having it right in front of the painting, the unfinished painting that was discussed earlier, that was explained earlier why it's the unfinished painting. Again, it's kind of that Bruce connection to his childhood, to the normal life he could have had. Had his parents not died, there wouldn't have been a Batman. Now we have this moment between him and Selena where they have this chance. Could they maybe have a normal life together? Could the two of them maybe one day figure out a way to have a normal life? I love that fact that it was in front of that picture that these two have this moment.
Yeah, that's so clever, man. You're right. Or is this just going to be yet another unfinished relationship that doesn't get to blossom? Yeah, good call, man.
I liked when Barbara is somebody has to call because of what happened with Jim Gordon. And that Bruce, we know, isn't good at that, those type of outreaches. Just realizing that there's a responsibility there to reach out to Barbara and as Bruce Wayne. And again, not being able to be totally honest. Because he can't explain how the dad was kind. He can't even explain about their relationship as, Batman and Jim Gordon and what they worked together as. It's an interesting sort of line that he has to skirt in even being a part of somebody's life. I thought that was really cool. Falcone is kind of proof of some of what Bruce starts alluding to. Harvey's able to kind of manipulate the coin a little bit. Like, there's a coin toss there. And, he's flipping for something nice or, do something a little crazy. So he flips the coin and it comes up nice. And he decides that nice thing is something nice for Gotham. Which is an interesting justification for what he does to Falcone.
Yeah, once again, the coin is now not the driving factor.
Right.
This is really... this is who Harvey is now. There's no longer two people. There is only the one person now. Again, the lettering did a brilliant job with this, where they're no longer doing that squiggly line so that it's the Harvey Two-Face voice. This is 100% Harvey Dent's actual voice now is saying all this stuff. And again, it was something that was really cool that, I cheered. You cheer when the bad guy gets shot and killed, and this is Falcone, so this is a major bad guy. So, yes, he should do that. But, again, as you said, there's that little interesting thing where normally the good toss would mean he'd live. No, I'm going to do something nice for Gotham. Bam! Shoots him.
No, you're both right. This is now who Harvey is, regardless. And you're right, Jim, just the lettering choices, they're really subtle things, but they just convey so much, don't they? It does show that, no, there's no argument anymore. We've had the psychedelic trip through what could be. We've had the battle, and now this is integrated. It'd be interesting to see another panel where we started the issue with the broken panels, to just have one big splash page with Harvey setting out what his new plan is, and it's just him telling you, no, this is what I am going to do because I am now Harvey Two-Face. I think that'd be quite interesting.
He framed Drake in a way that was brilliant. Like, in one sequence, he managed to frame Drake and publicly redeem himself.
Yeah.
He was the victim there. He changed his whole narrative. I thought that was an interesting sequence where it was Otis died because of the coin toss. Drake shows up, and Harvey has this all set up that he antagonized Drake specifically so he could utilize this. It was brilliant what he did.
Yeah, Harvey's still a politician that's got everything strategized out, and he knows how to play the public in order to get what he wants. He understands how valuable optics are and massaging the message so that you get people to understand reality is as you portray it to be. And I love that we've now got that brilliant Harvey that we saw earlier that we can believe in. We can also believe in Harvey Two-Face when he's pulling this sort of thing because he's still got that strategery behind him. It's so well played.
I love when people use strategery as meaning evil.
Well played. Well usage of the word.
Learned from the best.
Well, you got to completely agree. This really is a brilliant play on Harvey's part, getting the side, the Robin taken out of the picture, cleaning his own image, and then he calls into Bruce saying, "Hey, okay, time for me," because again, Selina let Bruce know he saw your face. He now owns Bruce Wayne, and Bruce, brilliant how he's playing this. Not only does he invite him down to the cave because he knows the truth now, but Bruce is sitting there in the wheelchair, looking all weak and feeble, trying to get Harvey to relax, his anger, and then he's trying to appeal to the good Harvey Dent, appeal to the good guy that's there. that he thinks is still inside his friend. Yeah. Try to get him to, either, there's a whole other side to this thing. There's a way that we can work together. We can actually do what we want to do for Gotham. And I love just how Bruce, again, is trying to play to the good Harvey, but that person's not there anymore. And I love how this ends up with how had there still been that duality, had there still been that conflict, this story could have ended dramatically different.
Yeah, I agree. I think what Bruce is doing is so clever in appealing to Harvey in a way that still also appeals when Harvey was good Harvey. He had that vanity still, and he had that drive to not be seen as weak somehow because he's betrayed his neighborhood, or he has to compromise with people to get to be the governor, and those sorts of things. He did it so nicely in that, yes, this is the perfect future for you, but it also appeals to, what was it? A few months in therapy and you'll come out a hero. I will have then retired, so the hero of Gotham won't be Batman, it'll be Harvey Dent. And I just love that appeal because it does work on both levels of this appeals to you as someone who does genuinely care about Gotham City and Burnside, but it also appeals to those negative emotions like the vanity and the need to be seen as the hero. It's so well balanced, and you're right, Jim. If good Harvey was still around and we'd been able to see the coin toss actually happen, I think the story could have ended very, very differently. Yeah.
The Bruce versus Harvey tete-a-tete was really interesting, where Bruce has this plan, and he's got this, great idea for confronting Harvey, playing into Harvey's psychosis, using the coin, talking about different pathways. This is you're heading yourself down this dark path to hell. There's another choice here. And, it's as simple as the coin toss. You could be on the other side of it. What's interesting is Bruce thinks he's switched the coins. What I love in the artwork is you actually see that the coin that was tossed is the scarred coin, which was a nice art choice because you see it in the sequence where Harvey's been bumped over by the penny, and Selina, later on goes to Bruce, hey, I saved you. You actually gave him back the real coin. He didn't realize it, but we see it as the reader. And I didn't catch this the first time through. It wasn't until Selina pointed it out that I flipped back and I'm like, did that happen? Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Like, we actually saw it. It's actually there, the scarred coin. Really cool that, they had that attention to detail in this.
It was funny because I remember when I first read through that sequence, I'm like, no, I actually thought in my head that Selina was lying to Bruce. And I had to go back and reread it going, oh no, there it is, because I didn't even notice the scar on the coin. I was just, you're focused more on all the other action going on in that sequence.
Right.
So it wasn't until my art read-through actually just reread through, because when she pointed out, I jumped back a couple pages and reread it. But you really, again, and then, when you're doing my second and third read-throughs, you really do see that, and it really does play out nicely. And it's a good overlap on where Selina's life is.
Yep.
This was a great ending for Harvey. Again, we all hate when they kill off the villains in these series. Flat out. That's the only complaint I have on the '89 universe is the end of each story, the main villain dies. I don't like that, but again, I'm accepting it as part of this universe. So Harvey got a really good ending, a really good death. But again, this furthered the story of Selina, because now she's really revealing where her mind is, about how she's not just against the guy who tried to kill her. She's now going against the whole corruption of the system. This for me was a brilliant page, because throughout this series you're getting this story and you're seeing the clues. And I didn't pay any attention to it the first time I was reading through because I was so focused on all the other stuff. All the stuff was a big surprise to me. I was like, oh my God. And then read-throughs, you see it playing out brilliantly with what she's doing and how she's been listening in, how she's laying the groundwork, how she, she knew what the big robbery was about when Bruce had no clue over it, because she's looking at, he looks at the big picture. He's not looking at the big picture. He's looking at just the immediate threat. This threat, this threat, this threat. Whereas she's looking at the big picture of the true corruption of Gotham. Isn't the thugs, isn't the street guys, the guys in the funny costumes. It's the politicians, it's the power people of Gotham bringing it down. And I love the fact that she's anti that. That is who she's going after. So this 100%, the fourth movie for me is putting these two against each other. And I think that is why one of the reasons I so want a sequel to this series, because I'd love to see that final confrontation of Bruce versus Selina, because that's really what I think the fourth one would be about.
I don't know that that's true, because she reaches out to Barbara later. And I'm not saying that they're going to be buddy-buddy in the fourth one, but she's reaching out to Barbara to have Barbara use that for some good. So I don't know... what is Barbara and Selina's relationship going to be with Bruce? I agree it's not going to be like hugs and kisses and things like that, but I wonder if that birds of prey analogy isn't too far off of what they may look like, but the question is, are they operating with Bruce or as their own free agents, and what does that look like in comparison to what Bruce does? It could be totally what you're saying, where it could be a fourth story is really the battle between the two of them, but I can't help but wonder if there isn't like a bigger bad that would be at play. Obviously, with where they leave things here, I don't know that their next meeting is going to be a pleasant one, if they have a next meeting. But boy, does it leave things in an interesting place.
I think maybe one way it could play out is to have that little nugget we had earlier where the Wayne family had bought out the Winston family's car, the motor factory, and we might find it may go down the route of the most recent Batman movie where the Waynes are kind of implicated in that corruption, not willingly and not willfully, but through their actions, they're allowing that corruption to continue. And so, it could be a setup with Selina finding something that implicates Wayne Enterprises at some point. I mean, and just the fact that Bruce, as the millionaire playboy, does inhabit that realm to some degree. So he's always playing, and there's that idea that Batman's ultimately a fascist guy because he's beaten up on the poor people and letting the rich people get away with it. So they could even have that sort of angle in there with Selina and Bruce going at it, maybe having Drake in the middle of it all going, well, Bruce, you know what? She's got a point. You did destroy my family's business and you are allowing this to continue. So, and I could see that playing out as a really interesting sort of, because this delves into psychology and philosophy a fair bit, this series. I think you could continue to do that just on another level with those competing views of Selina and Bruce on different sides with Drake and perhaps even Barbara in the middle. I think that would be really, really interesting.
I liked her point that she'd been chasing the stolen documents for months for her own agenda, but she put that on the side to save him. She thought that was more important. And, she's basically saying, you're being really sanctimonious here, but, you're forgetting. You're still standing right now because of me. And because of the fact that I made the right choices. I really liked her presentation there because she's right. There's a reality to that. We would not be talking about Bruce Wayne still if she had made a different choice. And that was, I thought, really cool.
One of the neat things that, again, as I'm going through this, looking over, as Oracle now, Catwoman is now giving all this information to Barbara. You do see that file transfer of $17 billion to, I'm assuming, to Selina's own account.
Yep.
Because the Bassett Bastet. I want to say that's one of the Egyptian gods of the cats. So
Yeah, she is. Yeah.
So that's a transfer. So Selena's taking $17 billion from Bruce, for her own, personal war that she's doing. But also, she's giving all the evidence against him, to Barbara to use. And everything you're saying about how with, there's still that whole dangling thread of the Winston Motor Company. In my head, I'm seeing an issue in the fourth movie. We have her playing Robin against Batman and using these tools, using that information against, to try to, to put a chink between, the armor between these two. Because in that sequence, we do see that it's Robin following her. So Robin's keeping tabs on Catwoman. So he knows where Catwoman is. He knows what Catwoman's doing. So it'd be kind of a neat play that she uses that evidence against, tries to split up the dynamic duo, and that again would be in Bruce would have his moment of realization saying, hey, yes, our family really messed over your family, because my guess is it wasn't a fair buyout. There was probably some corruption. There was probably some, unscrupulous manner at which they actually got the company and all that kind of nasty stuff. So there's probably a darker side to this whole story that will get played out, and eventually there'll be the realization and those two, Bruce and Drake would work together and come, and be accepting of what happened and blah, 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 and all that kind of neat, good hero moments, and I'm seeing this whole fourth movie already in my head playing out, and that's part of where Barbara realizes, that the Bat is actually trying to help Gotham, so she's, as the new Commissioner Gordon, would work with him in this. I see this dramatic fourth movie playing out,
You're forgetting a piece, though.
What am I forgetting?
The Power Elite that she's sicking Barbara Gordon on.
Right.
That the two of them are going to be combating. Catwoman and Barbara Gordon are going after the Power Elite, which, yes, Bruce is an element of that. And she's bitter with Bruce. And I agree with you that there's obviously going to be an interplay and exchange there. But I think the real big bad of this is going to be the rest of the people in that Power Elite that they're going after, who, quite frankly, are going to go after. She's right. This is dangerous. If Barbara starts poking them with a stick and Selena's helping her with that, it's going to put both of them in grave danger. I think what ends up happening is, and I think you're right, the bank transfer is not a throwaway. I think that there's a piece there where she's like sticking it to Bruce a bit, but she could have taken it all. She didn't. She took $17 million. So she's not trying to leave him destitute. She's poking him, and she's having fun poking him. I also think that there's a genuine piece of Selena here that wants to make the city a better place, and she wants to do that with Barbara. She's hoping Barbara will get on board so they can do that. She's going to do it in Selena's fashion. And if Bruce gets in the way, or if Drake, starts going after her, she may reveal certain pieces. I actually think you're right. There may be a certain element of her revealing information for the purpose of, for lack of a better term, putting an oil slick on the raceway with those two. But, basically to keep Drake from interfering from their plans. I think this is definitely going to be the three-front warfare, where the real problem is going to be Batman and them are going to eventually have to team up against the Power Elite that they've caused an issue with. Who constitutes the Power Elite? Who are going to be the big bad? Certainly not Falcone, but who's going to stop? Who is in that group? Who else are they going after that's in that case? And I think that's going to be a very interesting story. There's a political piece to be told here, and I do think it's more of a triangle of what we're going to see, and all of them fighting for Gotham. I was going to say for the soul of Gotham. I guess you would say the soul of Gotham because some people are taking it down a dark path. Yeah. So there's an intriguing story here, even if, to your point, Jim, where you're going, you're casting the movie in your mind, and there's no right or wrong to that. Three of us may have very differing ideas on where we see that film potentially going. Whether they do it or not, what's important here is this story is so rich that we are already off the page thinking about where it could go next and wanting it to go somewhere.
Yep. Yeah, and I think I can see both movies, both of your visions coming together really nicely, with Barbara and Catwoman Oracle working and figuring out who the big bads are. And I think, Sean, you've said it a few times. Who is who are the power brokers? Who is it that's pulling the strings? I think it's who, the Court of Owls, that can be introduced as this elite that are pulling the strings for everyone. I think it would be interesting to have Batman perhaps be somehow compromised and for Bruce Wayne to be the one who goes in as I'm the foppish elite playboy, and have him take them down from the inside as Bruce Wayne working with Barbara Gordon, being supplied with information from Catwoman Oracle, and Drake being the one on the ground getting the intel from the streets. I think tying both of your strands together like that would be an awesome movie. So I reckon you boys need to write to DC Comics with a pitch for your story and get them to start assigning artists, because I want to see this now.
I want to see more of this. And here's the thing, the vision I really want to see is when you flip the page, that later. I love when they do this with Bruce, where you see Bruce that, because Drake asked him that question, and he asked Selina the same question. Do you ever want normal? This is Bruce's dream of normal with Selina. He actually sees a piece where they could have been married. They could have had kids. They could have adopted the kid. What an opportunity. They've got the house for it. This could be the life that he has. I love the third panel in on that later. That shot looks so much like Michael Keaton.
Yeah.
And I really loved the look there of, the Michael Keaton Bruce Wayne and what he did. I just thought it was really, really a great sequence.
You know what I loved about this sequence? And I just noticed it now. The painting behind him is that unfinished painting, but this time it's finished.
Yes.
I just noticed it now as we're doing this. I never noticed it before with all my read-throughs. Because again, I was focused on how much that looked like Michael Keaton, how much that looked like Michelle Pfeiffer, and just how wonderful it was. I just noticed it now. That's awesome.
You know why? Read panel number 2.
Mom and Dad are still alive.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean it's really, really cool that in his mind his parents never died. He was able to have a normal life. He got married. It just to point of choices and different paths. How fitting with this story that was where this went. This was tremendous story. There was such a time where you'd get stuff like this and they were fun. But they lacked depth. You get a one shot of this kind of thing, and it wasn't fleshed out. It wasn't, it didn't go to places that pushed the boundaries. Nowadays, when you get movie tie-ins, movie sequels, things like that, what you get is this kind of thing where, let's get the original writer, let's get this great art team, and let's really do something special with this. What a great way to continue on this story. If they do another one of these in comics, it's got to be this caliber. It's going to seem strange to say I don't want them to do another one. I don't want them to do another one if it's not this quality, because this really is something. This is something I'll reread over and over again. This is something that I would give as a gift to people, because I have friends of mine that aren't like monthly comic readers, things like that, but they do read comics and they enjoy comics. And this one I would give them because I know they were fans of those films. So this would be a great one. Hey, read this. If you like the '89 film, you should read this. I mean, this is an easy gift.
Yeah, I agree. And I can think of people who came to see the movie with me that weren't Batman fans, but went for the music, and came out of that just asking me for more, for Batman comics to read, and to be able to contact them again now and say, "Hey guys, here's the sequel that we all wanted." No, you're right. It's the perfect gift.
Guys, anything else about this that we haven't had a chance to say that you wanted to shout out?
I think we covered it.
Yeah, I think we... Oh, no, just quickly jumping back to Harvey's death. When he died, it's almost... His death was similar to Jim Gordon's in that the very final scene he was saying, it's okay, we won, I am going to get better and I can see that everything is now going to be okay. So he was happy to die at that point because in his mind he'd become good Harvey again.
Yeah.
And this was the opportunity that he died. He was happy to die so he wouldn't have to be bad Harvey again. He was once again at peace. Maybe for the first time ever, he felt fully integrated and happy with where he was, with what he saw his future as, and was happy just to let go at that point and die. So it was another tragic end because he found redemption just at the moment that he died. His life ended. So that was the only other thing I wanted to say. I think I've said far too much. It's time for me to be quiet, I think.
No, this has been fun. I mean, one of the things that I really enjoyed about this was this is one of those stories that it's funny. We started this journey together, the three of us, with an intention of like, oh, we could have this out in one episode and we'll kind of like breeze through this quickly. And I love that the story wouldn't let us do that. That's always fun where you're like, as we start talking through it, we're like, I don't want to, like, we just naturally started going sequentially and really diving into this because the story demanded it. And that's fun because it really did. When you think about it, it pushed us to do something that we really had different ideas on how this was going to flow. And I love that. I mean, I think that is something that was great. Brett, I thank you for joining us. Is there anything you want to shout out or, anything before we wrap this up?
No, not really. If you want to check out, I did some writing for a comics website called, a geek website called Geek Syndicate.
Oh, I love that.
That's geeksyndicate.co.uk. I wrote some reviews there for different comics. Through Geek Syndicate, I was able to do a couple of email interviews with Matt Kint and Dave Gibbons. There was a really cool one I was able to do with Dave Gibbons. And yeah, I just reviewed different comics, talked about some links between comics and movies, and all sorts of things. So if you go onto their website and just type in my name in the search, if you're not already sick of hearing me talk about comics, you can read my stuff, and if you're not already asleep, then that'll certainly do the job.
Geek Syndicate's been around a long time too. They're tremendous, and definitely that'll be in the show notes. There'll be links to Geek Syndicate's website. So if you didn't get a chance to write that down, just look in the show notes, and you'll be able to click and go. They're terrific. So great thing to shout out.
No, I love Dave and Barry. They're both, they're my podcast UK heroes, and you guys are my American podcast heroes. So when I do finally get the courage and the time to put out something, I'll let you know. I'm looking to do a Vertigo Lucifer podcast towards the end of the year, early next year. I'll start chucking stuff out there. So yeah, hopefully I can get something out and be almost as cool as you boys.
Well, when you get that podcast up and running, if there's ever a point in time where you're looking for guests, it'd be fun. We'd certainly be happy to pop on your podcast as well.
Oh, man, that would rock. Yeah, done. All right, it's a date, man. I'll start thinking about when I want you to come in. That would be so cool.
Yeah, because Jim hasn't read that. So that would be kind of maybe a fun way to explore, too. So I'd love to do something. Because I have, and I love it. And I think it'd be kind of fun to chat through Lucifer at some point. So if you ever could use us, certainly we would be glad to be on that podcast.
Oh, man, for sure. I would absolutely adore that. That would be so cool. That'd be a bit of a dream, actually. I've always wanted to put out a podcast, and to have you guys on it would be, holy moly. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much. What an offer. Thanks, man.
Well, and I didn't mean to speak for you, Jim, there on that one, but I figured you'd be in on it because Lucifer, I think, is one of those where thank us later. It's a great book.
Yeah. I think so. Yeah, it's one of those books. What I really like about Lucifer is because he's written so well and he's so charming and he's always one step ahead of people, and the people that he's generally up against are even worse than he is. And so you start to really like the guy, and then they'll do something that is so horrible, not graphically or gory or anything, but just so reprehensible. And you think, oh, yeah, I've been reading about the Prince of Lies this whole time. Of course this guy's a scumbag. So the way they do that, they really get you to relate to him. And just when you start to think, he's not so bad after all, no. And he is manipulative and he is evil and he is everything you expect Lucifer to be. But, yeah, you find yourself relating to him. Is that how you saw it as well?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes, absolutely. And
yeah,
I think that was the intriguing part about a lot of Vertigo series, is that they were exploring things in kind of a unique way. And I think that's something that's an interesting hook about the series. And I think that's why you doing a podcast about it, I think, is just going to be something that people really dig, just because it's a different sort of thing. Yeah.
It's like I said last week, like I wanted to hear someone talk about it, and no one has. So they're stuck with some boring bloke in Australia talking about it, I suppose. poor podcast audiences. My gosh.
I want to thank you again for joining us on this and for suggesting this book. It's a very interesting read.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah, and I'm thrilled that the three of us got to do this. We'll have to do this again.
There they are, all alone except for that old character.
I would like to remind everyone about our show voicemail line. It's 1-440-388-4434 or drnorge on Skype. You can also email us at ragingbullets@gmail.com. We love connecting with you. Ragingbullets.com is our show website. It feeds into Twitter. It feeds into our Facebook fan page. We are proud to be part of an amazing Facebook group community. And that leads to our Speeding Bullets segments, which will be returning next episode. I want to thank everyone who always participates in our Facebook group. It's a great community to be a part of, and it's really their community. We are proud to be associated